Kia ora.
Oh, cool.
Well, over here, then I can see straight on.
See?
Best angle.
See you here, Auntie. I'm looking things through.
It is on.
Is on Brisbane? Hey?
Is
Is he?
No, he's not. No.
No.
He's got another little.
Oh.
Yeah, which is good.
Well, yeah, it is. Keep it warm,
Keep it warm, keep your breathing.
keep it warm, keep it alive.
No, yes, yep, yep.
That's more the beauty
Did you see that? 6 slides? 6 slides. That's represents. She said 6.
No,
So
nice,
stay empty too long.
Or was it
yeah,
just,
nice.
was it 6 minutes?
I think so. That's
Obviously
that's
these-
the Matangi, right?
Oh.
It'll be the ones that are down the descend of the river.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
it'll be like here, Taiho,
Yeah.
Te Poho.
Oh, yes. Yep, yep.
Yeah, must be a
okay.
couple further up.
Further up, yeah.
Could be Waihare.
Something to do with
Yeah.
what's that kind of 12? And she likes it too.
Oh, good.
And well, oh,
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna stop that.
Oh, because I've gone down to Chumali's a few times. I haven't seen her cat here.
She has been sick.
Oh,
Morena koutou, nau mai, haere mai. Whare. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful day. I'm going to ask Papa Bill to open us up. Excuse me.
Nā tia I motu. A kia koutou, a kuhi mai, kawe mai, o mea mai tonu koutou, o reira a hoki ki te o koutou tina, o koutou kanohi ki ta tina. O reira, e tima tana tātou mo tēnei karaki mo tātou. Roto te matu e ko tama me te wairo. Kia koe pā, ko tā mai tonu mātou I roto tātou whare a Te Rauhina. Aroha nui ki a koe, ko whakapai I na haerenga mai o tātou I roto te huarai, ka tae ana mātou ko tēnei ki. Nō reira, tēnei ki ino I ki a koe. Ngā mea mā wiwitanga I roto tēnei hui, I roto tātou whare, I roto tātou kāinga, I roto te hoipera, me piki I ora ki a tātou katoa. Ngā rei tēnei te mihi nui ki a koe, I ino I ki a koe, ho mai ngā kupu kōrero mo te ora ngā tio o tēnei hui. I roto te matu e te tama, te wairo e tapu, āmen. Kia ora.
Āmen.
Kia ora, Papa. A couple of notes for today. Apologies from Joanna, our beautiful trustee couldn't be with us today. But in saying that, we're wanting to know if it's okay that we record today's hearing on our Zoom, and that will allow us to take the minutes and everything from there. So if I ask you to just repeat yourself in regards to something, is that okay? Kia ora. Can I have is there any apologies?
what? One here.
I had one, but I cancelled it.
Karina and Andy.
Nice.
Oh, well, I'll have to check my son in. He should have been here. Oh, wait.
Just get someone to sit there. To move it. Can I have someone move that we receive the apologies? I just want to note from our paper. Can I have a seconder, please? Liz. Kia ora.
Did you make an apology for the other one? From India?
Pardon me? Joanna, yes. Yes, I mentioned at the front end.
Sorry.
Thank you, that's okay, Papa, I should speak up.
And that's also the same with our Tato Rep,
Rep,
Eddie. He's
yes.
had another, unfortunately, had a clash with Hui, so he's another.
And we support our whanaunga for that hui that is attending today. Okay. That's it. So we're just going to go through our agenda, which is a chair report. It's a lengthy report. Well, lengthy in the sense of we've. Would you like a report, darling?
I'll just do this.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So before Namu kicks into to her chairperson's report, I just wanted to, it's always a good thing when we start out to reflect on what guides us, what drives us, what are we actually here to achieve. So I just wanted to pop up briefly, our tikanga that we've determined for our kāhui, which is those tangas that are up there. But yeah, I mean, those are the key ones for us there, and we're all pretty well versed in them, so I'm not going to go through each of them individually as to what they may be. In terms of what we're trying to achieve, it comes together in our mission statement. So it's around achieving marae sustainability, spiritual and physical well-being, and also doing the right thing by our environment. We'll coalesce together, and if we do it right, then we can build a prosperous future for ourselves. So that's our mission statement, and that succinctly put in our vision that hui huia nākia kia puawai. So together we can be empowered and prosperous. That's all. I'll hand it back to you. Yeah.
I just want to make note of what my cousin Joanna being here today is because of her spiritual and physical well-being is not up there. She's right down, and that's why she couldn't make it today. And I'm so glad that you guys got there. Anyone who's in that state.
Yes. Yeah.
Look after themselves.
Yeah.
Before a hui.
Yeah.
To their hapu or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, and that just goes with the words that Papa Bill shared with us this morning in our mihi. Mā te atua e manaaki ana i a rātou. So, the Lord will look after us all. Kia ora.
So do you want me to read the chair report? I asked that because what I can give you the reason behind why the report was written out like this. So because for the last 6 months since our AGM we haven't had a kānui for Te Kānui, but I wanted to reflect on what we have been doing as your trustees in the months week until today up to today. So that's outlining our roles and responsibilities as your trustees and how we meet on every Sunday. So we do four Sundays in the month, and but we also meet in between those Sundays if something like the DSP or other rules that come up that are pertaining to our kāhui. Outside of that, we also attend other huis, Bob and I in town, and also Joanna comes on Zoom. So we try to attend huis that are anything to reflect from Tato or where they're at, as well as any other things that we feel are positive for our kāhui. So the report that's going in front of you today is the reflection of what we do on a monthly basis, or what we have been doing on a monthly basis up to here. It doesn't really reflect, but happy to ask any questions. One of the first, just some of the key points out. The first point with the whakakī annual fishing, that was gave us an opportunity to start reflecting into our sponsorship. How do we look at that within our trustees and our trustee, also our policies and procedures that we do. And so Whakakī was our first sponsorship, and we felt real smitten about that. And it was also reflected in our kāhui come across. And so monthly we have been really hitting the ground running in this space, but it's been awesome.
Can I just give you an update in February? The latest update is that me and anyone no longer do culture hub. Tia, the general manager, is currently it's something else now. We're broadening the scope of that coordinating. Why I know this, because she looked at me. So until I get a contract and see what she's wanting, it's just there at the moment. Yeah.
So throughout the months, it does reflect Tātei's mahi as well, like who they've been hiring and what their roles are. So at least we're getting an update at that point. And what's going on in the Tātou space, and if there is any employment, we know that we try and get it out. If there's anyone that we see in our kāhui that may want to have that role, but how do we share that out?
Auntie, what's the New Zealand housing?
Yeah, so that's a biannual conference that they have. So yeah, so it's a whole lot of Māori organisations, whether they be settlement groups or iwi groups that come together that have an interest around the housing space for Māori. So it's just an opportunity for, I guess, all those different rōpū to get together, share what they're doing with each other in terms of, so there's a lot of focus around papakainga at this one. And because it was down in Heratonga, we actually were able to go out there, with the attendees, were able to go out there and visit some of the different papakainga schemes that they got going down in Heratonga. So it just provides an opportunity every couple of years for those groups to get together and talk about it. The other aspect of that is that the government agencies also come in. And well, there's a I forget what their Māori name is, but there's a whole government department around housing and trying to improve that. But TPK are one of the players. Yeah.
Definitely.
Looking at that into the future, is that what we want to aim towards, or?
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's the feedback that we've got when we've talked around aspirations with the people of papakainga. It's certainly on our list. It's not an immediate priority. But if there's somebody in the whānau that wants to drive it, like as a whānau initiative for themselves, then we'd be quite happy to meet with them to see how we can assist in that space.
I think that's a great idea. You really need someone on the ground doing that. Just like I'm just going to bring out about that Wangatahi.
Yes, yeah.
So we definitely,
to lead that.
Yeah.
And I really hope you fellas are looking at getting someone to lead this housing strategy on the ground. You just can't afford to be doing that. You fellas need to stay up here.
Yeah, no, so we are.
And
Yeah.
have someone down here, which takes me to the admin. What's happening with the admin?
Yeah,
so
we'll
what we
get
can
to
do,
that.
we'll go through the report, but a lot of the stuff is stated in the report, the last couple of paragraphs, that we would actually got some supporting documents and discussions as we go further on. It's just, this is a very much an eye over of what we've done to date, and there's a lot more around updating every month in regards to.
It's good to pick up on these interest or point out so we can come back to it.
Yeah.
Because there is some interest around housing, quite a lot of questioning, and so it may be something we come back to in general business. So
Yeah.
down so that we can have a full discussion about
Yeah.
that's something of interest.
Yep.
Oh, and the administration thing, whether it's fundraising, whatever you call it, position, so we can bring that back and
Yes,
achieve
that's-
that
Yep.
for us.
That's definitely a part of our updating too. Yeah. So the chair, So the Kāhui chairs had their second hui. This one was more fruitful than the last, which was just the, here we are. We, as noted, that's where we want to do a quarterly meeting. Inside of the Kāhui chair, there was 4 key topics that we want to Lewis to take to the table. And that was around, we agreed to have a quarterly meeting, which we wanted administration support from TWNART. We asked that they look into a collective marae insurance model. The SIRS, we would like the opportunity to get an update regards to SIRS relationships and where do we go from here. And the housing, the potential to engage in interim housing. So it's definitely where we're heading to. So these were key from, these were collectively what I found at the table that we had all the same interest in without crossing paths or anything. And we had all 7 representatives at the table, which was great. For me, it was a good opportunity, like they told the trustees, to hear around a collective discussion. So there's mana mutahaki. So does that mean that if you want to move off the collective space, then is that the space that we want to communicate with? If that's they're only heading towards mana mutahaki now sooner than we want to go in a collective. So that's the opportunity. I had those conversations with chairs at that time, just to get a good insight where everyone is at. So that's a positive space going forward around ensuring that we're getting not only tātou, the chairs are talking, trustees are talking about what we can do collectively together, which can help us financially, man space and opportunities we can help each other out. In May we had a very fruitful May, and Bob's going to fill us in around the wānanga that we had at his house. So it was good. Today. I put
through the chair, just on the project manager, Anita Kāhui.
yes. Yes. So Liz has informed us that today, this morning, that Benita Tāhui is going to stop in. So she's hired as the project manager with TWNART. She's just going to come in, give us, introduce her.
Project manager.
She's not project manager, she's the project lead. What will, I think she needs to hear from her. She's not the project manager, she's the project lead.
Or
Yeah, exactly, I'm not sure. She's been given something. She was originally,
Well, because that's why originally what I put in my report is exactly what the role was at the time that she was hired. So if that's changed, that hasn't come through our books. So that was
what
something.
does she do?
Well, that's it. She's project from.
But what was the scope of the job that you were told?
That she was going to do the round tile project and bringing every clay to everyone, all that environmental for TWNART. Yes, that's what my understanding was. What her role was at
That
the
would be
time.
great for those of us involved, that we actually get a say in.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of us are actively involved in the play on.
Yeah.
One would have thought that would have come out to us.
Straight away.
So that's
Well,
what.
before a selection.
Yes.
process, So that we could have, I mean, I'm starting to see how. But you know.
that's fine.
Which is not a bad thing.
That's not a bad
It's
thing
just
at
a
all.
reverse of that top down.
Yes.
You know, the last thing we want is someone coming and telling us.
No,
Yes.
that we're living and breathing.
she's coming in.
And I think too, there's some questions that she can lead into because there was a tile wānanga that was hosted here from TWNART.
All right.
And so they did have a wānanga where they brought her in around what I was scope of working in.
How long ago was that?
That one was in April. It was in April. It was advertised through the space of it. And
Was that a Tato wine?
yes. TWNART wide.
You didn't get the midnight.
It came through
It might have come through.
the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes through the
Do you get the
panel.
Tātou Pānui?
Through the email.
I'll have to have a look, but I don't remember. Maybe we're missing out on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did. So True, did you attend that one? Oh, so I did attend on our behalf to that time here because it was based here. One of the key, and that's probably good that she's attending, because one of the key aspirations that we were drawing from that was having a table that we had represented. So I was calling them the environment warriors, that we could have a position that we could have someone sitting at their table so it can advise us and come back. So that was something that that was taken off the floor.
For her to come here to introduce herself and talk about that tile setup. How it's going to look. That's because she's the lead for that. Supposed to be. Leave it at that.
Cool, yeah, that'd be
We'll just
interesting.
wait, we'll just wait
Yeah.
and see what
Yes, thank you. Yes.
April on the fourth thing, letter of support for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Mary, I want to say thank you. The vote has been taken at the council and it's overwhelming that the board would be established. You probably heard it. There's two, but there's also a letter coming out to the majority to vote. And one is that you either have two for the whole of the Rohe of the Wairau, that has the northern side and the southern side of Spain, or we go for Rohe Warner or the Whenua. My suggestion on that we have a representative from the north and a representative from the south to do the both. Otherwise, we're going to get Richard at one end dealing with whakatio all the time. And
Oh, the north, you mean the Wairau north and
Yeah.
Wairau south?
South. No, which way? There's the two wards on the regional council.
There's one for Wairau.
One northern
Yeah.
or southern, one each. So if we go for that, then we'll get the one in, but he or she will have to develop and work for the Rohe Warner and the Whenua.
And we need to.
And
keep
it's better
close.
to have our own
Yeah.
than to have
Yeah.
somebody from Otani talking about whakatio.
Yeah, no, that's
Get
fair
what I'm
enough.
getting at?
Trapai.
Through the
Ka
chair,
pai, uncle.
through the chair, we need to keep an eye on that because there's some. So there's a couple of people in town making a lot of noise for a lot of nothing, and we need to make sure that they don't get in. All right? So we
I
need to
think-
keep an eye on that, and
I
I'll try and keep an eye on that myself too, because someone will be looking for that position.
And I think this is probably a way around how do we have our relationships that we have with current boards who represent Wairau and current whānau that are maybe on these
And
boards.
that's where the problem is, who's on the boards here in Wairau. There's some people that's on these boards here in Wairau that are not right for the job. And, you know, you've got a whole raft of other people that can do this job and be personal. I just wanted to put it out there.
So one of that on, would you mention names because it's fun. Charlie Lamb and for the Māori Chinese, that's myself, Michelle McElroy and Te Rauhina Kāhui.
And that's exactly who I'm talking about. We need the right people on there. Those last two names you mentioned, we don't need them to represent us in Wairau. They can't, because they're all about themselves, not for the.
Well, they won't be voted on by the board, they'll be voting on by
By
the
the
people.
people. You're too true.
So we've got to have one, I agree with you, we have one from. Yeah.
We're our own.
Trapai.
Anyway.
Ka pai. That's right. Can I have a
Many
move?
thanks for the letter.
Thank you. Can I have a mover for the chair report, please?
You should leave it for a second.
Okay. I'll move it. Can I have a second it?
The,
All in favour?
Aye.
So discussing your report, we're gonna push to GB. Discuss further.
As we go on,
so we do have a couple of people on our Zoom session with us, and one of them happens to be Te Rauhina Marae, who works at Hawke's Bay Regional Council. As you can see that note that she's flicked us to it there, that Te Rauhina can follow up with avenues for feedback directly to Hawke's Bay Regional Council, to the point you raised, Papa, about
Did she do my report?
yes.
she would have, but I think it was the Papa Bill's point about having the north-south representation rather than the more Whenua one. Yeah. Kia ora. Thank you for that, Wairama. So just the slide that's up there on the screen there just looks at our Namu spoke to the work that we've done over the last few months. There's obviously a few things that we've got planned to do before the end of the year as well. So we have spent some time last month and certainly continue to spend time around the work that we're doing on our strategic, on our PO that we have, and we'll talk to that shortly in our presentation. There's also something called a SIPO that we're developing as well that we need to continue with that, and we'll give an update on. I'll give an update on that later on. Another Kāhui members hui in October, and to your point around the rangatahi, Liz, we have reached out to rangatahi to work with them on a rangatahi strategy. So, you know, there's things being planned around that towards the end of the year as well. So that's part of the ongoing discussion. Certainly we've talked about a rangatahi activator role but no, we don't, because I guess the first thing to do, and we had a call with the rangatahi who were working in this, who are part of this working group, just to talk around, you know, they are talking around like certain activities they want to do. In some ways, we do want to take a step backwards and just go over what, you know, the whole objectives of the rangatahi group are, and what are some of the, you know, some of their goals that they want to achieve, which will drill down into these activities that they that are being planned.
I asked for time frame. Do they know how much time they need to work on it? Are you just going to leave it open and we might come around another year or come to the next AGM and we still have nothing done?
So can I?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Why don't we put a time frame on that?
Yeah, because you know that in this stage here where we're looking at strategy and all the rest of it, there's nobody in a paid role. There's all people giving up their spare time to work on this stuff.
Take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Funding. Is funding going to be
It's so that still doesn't help us in the governance stuff, because it is people that you want to involve in there that need to formulate what it is that you're doing. So we'll continue to work on that, and when we formulate, you know, what are our objectives, what are our goals from out of this rangatahi po that we have, then we'll be able to develop some timelines and importantly talk around, you know, who's going to lead those activities, which comes back to this activator role.
Can I just add here that though, we met via Zoom with our, so Joanna and her PO space is working with our rangatahi, but we met with them on Zoom the other night, and it's definitely, they won't allow us to go another year with nothing because they're movers and shakers. The cool part about it is that it's just making sure we come back to a strategic plan and focus. And we definitely have a great group that's currently, since November, have been sort of chumming on in the background. Trevor is one of them that's sitting at that table along with Tawai Marama. And then, so we do need a representation from Te Rauhina to sit in that space. So exciting work that they have planned. And they do need to like to, they want to know where we're at, what are we doing? Yeah. So we support them fully. So at the time that the letter went out from Joanna, there was an invite, and we sort of reached out in that network space. We just need to revisit that again. No, definitely not.
Yeah.
The group's
So
still chumming.
Trevor's part of that working group, so I'll just ask him to introduce who the rest of the rangatahi are working on that.
Yeah, tēnei te mi kia koutou katoa, ko Trevor Waikawa tōku ingoa, o ngā uri o te whakaki nui arua. Kim and Trevor are my parents, so Waikawa. And yes, honoured and grateful to be part of Te Whakakinui Rangatahi Rōpū Working Group. We are very much active. There's a group of us, so there's myself, Te Wairama Munro, as well as Josiah Tawhita, Joanna's son, as well as Crystal Phillips, as well as Alex Hiripi, and as well as Josh, Uncle Broughton's son. Well, and as Namu just raised, we still need one or two from Te Rauhina just to balance out the conversation, because we are Te Whakakinui Aroa, and we're very much one heavy at the moment. So it's great to have that representation. But when that comes on board, I'm pretty sure that they will all fit in quite well and just get on with the stuff they need to do, because we're quite active in that space. Very, very keen to get things going.
Yeah. I'll talk to it now since we're talking about it, and I guess the question that some people might have is, why have we got this working group of rangatahi? And this is when we were doing our strategy last year. The question that we posed to ourselves as trustees: are we the right people to be formulating a rangatahi strategy? And the answer is no. You want, young, competent, capable people who are formulating the rangatahi strategy, which is why we reached out to, those in our hapu that we know who have an interest in this kaupapa, to see whether they were interested in forming this working group, and they have. So, they have been very active, especially down at the activity level, wanting to do stuff. So we'll get that done.
So what's the age limit?
There is. Yeah. Well,
Too old.
yeah.
Well,
believe they're all under 30 at the moment.
Yeah.
So some of them are quite close to that, but they are under 30. Yeah.
We did reach out to Kahimata and to Unique, like that rangatahi space coming through, but I think definitely there should be like a tuakana taina space.
Yeah, that's why I speak to result.
I'll speak to them.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. I think it's when you're hitting 50, 60.
Yeah.
That's when you're not really rangatahi anymore.
Tag whichever this afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's just like.
Yes.
Cowboy.
So just from my perspective, so we've got, the design of our framework, which is really good, it's governance, yes. And then we've got now this development of our rangatahi strategy, and there's going to be other ones as well. And so when the rangatahi determine to do something, is there a mechanism to support them to actually do it? So, because not everything is kind of top down. Like the rangatahi, you're not going to sit there for 2 years and devise a strategy and all that sort of stuff. So, and I think that's what's been coming through, right? So you almost need to have a contingency or something so that you can actually provide some input to what, and if you think of it from a developmental point of view, the rangatahi, because they're really active, keen to get on with stuff. I'm not being actively involved in strategy, but I know.
Yeah, they want to do stuff.
So that's where you need a contingency. So we're not holding them up.
Yeah.
So
no, understand.
So the contingency, if you can put that into your planning, this is kind of, you may not have thought about this as part of your overall planning, your contingency for things that are here and now.
Yeah.
Because that's where the rangatahi space is, it's over here and now. And from a planning point of view, if you're planning from bottom up, then you get those rangatahi, don't take them long to actually think. They might take a weekend to think through something where they can crank into gear.
Yeah.
And then within a week or two or a month, they've got something that they need some funding to actually run to achieve some of the first output. So can I suggest, and I don't know how we formalise this, but can I suggest that there's a contingency set aside because we've got $500,000 in the bank. I mean, it's not as if we're poor, and when I'm not talking about $100,000 contingency, I'm talking about a contingency that then
Allocate.
supports
Yep.
the rangatahi if they want to do something,
Yep.
like here and now, or the
Yeah.
next 2 months, because I'm picking that there's some stuff that's coming.
Yep.
So do I need to move a motion to,
We-
because this is kind of outside, because you're,
We currently have that inside of our.
Yeah, no,
this is part of
we're
our-
okay for the motion to be
Yeah.
moved because we are, you know, supporting them in
Supporting
that
them.
way now.
because I'm
Yeah,
just thinking that, because it's not just the rangatahi, because you may get something coming in from those of us who have got a passion for housing,
Yeah.
which you might not have known.
yeah.
You know, and so, you know, while we're waiting for Tātou and all the groups
Yes,
and all around the country to do their thing, Willie Tiapo is running around the East Coast. They've got bloody houses coming out of their ears, left, right and centre, every, you know, so I'm not saying we do that, but I'm just saying that there may be other things. But
Yeah.
so if we could have something where there's a contingency, so for now, if the rangatahi want to get on with their stuff, or if any other grouping wants to get on, you guys are empowered to say, right, up to a certain amount, we can provide some support funding or some resourcing. It's like how you run a.
No,
community.
that's fantastic.
Yes,
We need to
we-
have that feedback from our members to, you know, to,
Just do it. You've got to do it. Because we don't want to talk about this next story. This came up last at the AGM. Just do it. Find the funding, find someone to get, I bet you these young ones have got it all sorted out. They would do it, I bet you.
they've already put in their funding application for their
Yeah.
first activity, so.
I'm actually thinking about a commitment from.
Yeah.
Kāhui.
Yes.
Yeah, to
of
support,
the
to support.
members, Because
Yeah.
that's one thing, that's like contingency for that kind of activities.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be huge, but it's got to be something. And if you can already do that, that's fine, awesome. So you'll do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. The second thing is that, I guess it's came up before, and we thought about it 2 years ago, was a funder position. And then we could call it, we always thought about administrator or
Administrator.
something like that, but a funder position.
Yes.
And by that, I mean that we get somebody to, whenever something pops up, where Kāhui people want to get on with something, it's land development, or whatever it is, that we have somebody who you can engage to do
Do
that
something
thing.
next.
Just think.
So rather than looking at a strategy that's equal to here and to Whakake and all that, that's awesome, that's the framework. But the action part is where you have available some money to do a feasibility study, or to do something that will leverage some other funding, or get someone to look around for funding that
Funding.
may be available to do this, because those are the immediate things. It's not huge, but it can be done piecemeal. I mean, the big thing would be to fund somebody to actually drive that and pay 50,000 or 80, whatever the hell it is, to get somebody actively involved. But I don't think we're there at the moment to do that. But we may be at the point where we're thinking that we need somebody to come in and to help, you know, somebody who owns a block of land. So
Someone
Tātou
like you,
and
Richard.
doing, well, I'm not thinking, I'm thinking about, you know, what Tātou's doing with their horticultural thing, great. But there may be something that
Yeah.
people are thinking of other than, that.
Yeah.
Might not want to grow, so they might want to do, you know, so, but that person might connect with Tātou on a, or ring up to Lewis and then harass the general manager and say, right, we've got a live one here, you know, and get on with it. Because I think Tātou are starting down that track from an economic development point of view, but they're not quite there.
Yeah.
And this is now 3 years post settlement, and we're sort of thinking, well, hey, there's some stuff going on the ground.
Let's just get it,
So a little facility inside of
our space.
Come on.
Love it. It sort of meets us at a timely space that we start discussing this, because the key space in the last 3 years has been our foundation to be able to do a policy and process so we can move and shake some of these things, knowing that we're doing it in the right particular formal way. So definitely kōrero back from the whānau. This is nowhere into the space that we can start engaging out and looking at, right down to job applications we've written up, job descriptions, and putting aside exactly what you all saying. So
So
actually,
we only work with that, because that's administration now, going on to administration now. We only use that with that, because I thought we were, got the funds to look at taking on an administration support person or whatever to do with fellas time. So you fellas can just concentrate on that high level stuff, strategic planning stuff.
Yeah, so we did review that when we had our wānanga last month. So we spent a weekend just, sorting out our strategic pose, looking at our activities and looking around about a number of things, but certainly that was key to it, is around, so we're calling it an administrator role, but a key portion of that is around looking at those funding streams and how to activate that. So we're working, we've still got a bit of work to do on the position description and advertising, not too much. We think we've got it.
because the key thing is that, well, the key,
We're going to,
fund it out.
so initially we're going to fund it
Fund it.
through our Kāhui.
Yes.
Are you considering looking at funding?
Yes,
Yes.
but it's the old
Gotta
catch-22
hire the-
until you get somebody in to take a look at the funding and what that may offer in terms of that position. We're not going to get there.
Yeah. So that we are working into that. So I think, and as we go on, and when we get into our financial report, a lot and around Bob explaining around us where the outcomes of what happening now is definitely what we're discussing.
Yeah,
And
so
what's
we've
looked at.
budgeted for that position, even though, after investigation, we may be able to fund it. We've still budgeted for it, just so that we know that we're covered financially to offer that.
So just a question on the scoping of that role. What's the point that money was just making to work out? So you've got someone who can do administration, but that's quite specific. It's really if you get someone to do that, it's amazing. The funder role might be as challenging or have a whole lot of different skills that you require for that role. So I don't know whether are you looking at the one role as opposed to two.
Initially,
Initially
yeah,
it was.
because and looking at what that,
You have two part roles instead of having a full-time role.
You don't want to have them together because they're big jobs on their own.
right.
The both of them are big jobs.
I think too that the role of the administrator, and that's what we've been discussing, is there's a little part that they may do, and it's like it could be something as minimal as to the bigger scale of where we want our funders to do, our fundraising. Well, it is a funding agency to go around our applications. That role is going to be big in comparison to the small admin space. And so for us, the admin role would be predominantly the role, but the admin part would be great if they had the ability to be able to do, because the admin for us is really minimal, because we do our own things anyway. So, and I know that some of partly would be to actually relinquish some of the stuff with Joanna. But that's why we thought it was like a one part role, or two parts within the one. And then if we're looking more so around it, the whole costing on having two staff, once we get the staffing role spaced into, what does that look like in reflection to where we are in our government space? So it is moving in that way.
Madam Chair, I think you fellas need to see it.
Not
Just give it to that person and let them do all this stuff, because you fellas are trying to do all this stuff and trying to do all your fellas stretch stuff at the same time, and we're not seeing outcomes. I'm not seeing outcomes. You've been there how many?
3 years.
Yeah.
So 3 years.
Yeah. One term, and we ain't seen any outcomes, and that's what I'm getting worried about. You fellas are getting snowed under with work, and all the money that's happening around the world. It's just a lot of talking. Now, talk is cheap. We all know that. Talk is cheap, and there's no action. That's the problem, and it's creeping into our Kāhui. all of our kāhui.
And I'm
It's
kind
been-
of, sorry, I'm kind of thinking, you know, when I look around, I've been here for a while. But when I look around at I will say it, our meagre attendance, then I kind of wonder whether people are getting a bit foreheart, that there is nothing, nothing that we can actually see, nothing on the ground, you know, a building being put up or something really tangible that we beneficiaries can see. And I think that could be why repentance is not, I think it's a priority.
No, I agree.
Yeah, 20 people. And, I mean, I've got a.
You're right.
But in terms of the admin role, yeah, I don't think it, I mean, not knowing what it is, definitely, I think that I wouldn't like to see that mixed in with the fund role, because we've got a whole lot of stuff out there that we can actually, you know, groups like the Rangatahi group, they want to fund that. Kind of some person that's really passionate about it, kind is out there somewhere, and they might want something. There's so many different things happening out here in our market that I think we're missing out on because we haven't got yet.
You need a manager. You need a manager to do all that money. And they can take care of everything, admin and all this funding and all these roles that's coming up like Tai or Rangatahi, the housing stuff and all that. Those are all big money. You fellas need some good fun. I know you fellas are busy. It's a top heavy and things are not getting done. That's what I see that even across other kāhui. It's you know, you don't even want to go to the kāhui because nothing's happening. Like Mana is saying, nothing's happening.
I guess things do happen, but things do happen at a glacial space. Yeah. Sorry, Heather.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking the same lines there. What's been put across the board now, you know, it's been nearly 2 years. And, we haven't seen anything, like, I'm just talking about the strength there, you know. I don't know, but we should have some, I know none of you slack, because they haven't come near yet. I know we're going to do it, but getting there, I've been trying to get it done for the last 5 years.
5 years.
You'll get
And,
there.
you know.
Next to it, I mean, and then you go to your financials, there's a lot of expenses, a lot of outgoings, with income.
I
So
think
you need
it's
to
the same way.
balance, have the balance there.
So the
Maybe we can hire someone.
Yeah.
Hire
That's what I'm
someone
saying,
to do the
you
strip
need a
thing,
manager.
come do the strip thing. Is there funding there for that? For someone that's got a strip thing, because it's, I don't know it's a big job, right?
So we've got the strength plan in place, it's doing it. It's
Yeah,
doing
that's
it.
putting it down to the activity
it's
level.
the activity
Yeah.
level.
Maybe you can hire someone to do it. Can we do that? Look into it.
So strap plan for who? We, as a Kāhui, we have
Yeah,
our,
it's kind of- strip thing.
so we have a strategic plan.
Because I think we can get all this.
And this is all of our
paper,
part,
and
yeah.
all the trees still together.
Yeah.
tonight. But to actually do the money on this paper, it's not happening. That's what-
Yeah.
This is from our side.
And we haven't reached our PO update yet, and we'll get to it. But yeah, no, I will, you know, I do agree with that. Things go at a glacial space. Quite a few of the things that we're trying to achieve that are in our strategic plan. We've tied them in with Tato needing to do a similar thing. And,
And
you know,
utilising their funds. to do
that doesn't move quickly.
That's right, you see, that's the same thing.
Yes,
Kind of
that's
filtering
another
it down, because part of the same to us sitting out here.
Yeah.
Is that we see nothing, we see nothing. You know, now we're doing a whole lot of planning, whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, what are we benefiting?
What are the
how we
outcomes?
benefiting
Yeah.
from this after 3 years? You know, what benefit has actually come out to the ground, to the horizon, to the people?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we don't see. We don't see perfect, and you know, maybe it's filtered down to the Kāhui as well.
We're very much sitting in a space that Whakaki is actually in a good position, even though it doesn't seem that we are, and at a tātou level, because we have moved so fast within our strategic planning space around our policies and processes. It's 104 page of bringing that all together, doing Bob and I be like, that's been quite a tense that we needed to. So when we get a funding in, we got something to go by. We've got something to stand on to support us in that space. So when we get employment, we have the policies and process to follow us if we have anything around risk management with our employee or employer. We're doing, Tātou didn't have a good establishment of that. We didn't want to pay thousands of dollars like a couple of other kāhui have to get that, because we were wanting to do that kind of mahi was something crucial for us to do without actually paying. And Nungmai Wahine and both Rakai Parker told me you should like $10,000, get someone to do it. It's like, but that's our fund, those $10,000. Well, and so in saying that we're now to a point now, 3 years later, that we actually can start looking into hiring. So our mahi in our whanangom in May was about collating that and about us actually looking and thinking we can start looking into hiring someone, we can start looking into.
So through the chair, sorry, there is funding out there and you need to talk to Denise now. I don't know what's happening with you fellas collaboratively in Kāhui space. If you fellas are even still together, but if you go to Denise Eagleson, she's got money to bring in someone to do that money. So can you talk to her and
so we at our Kāhui hui didn't mention anything about, and that's where you think collectively you would share that kind of stuff.
She's got some funding for farmery, for administration. So look into that.
Thank you
It'd
so
be
much.
good if we can get a manager on board for you fellas now, hopefully before the AGM. I don't want to hear anymore. We got this policy, or we got this in place, or doing this. Just do it. You fellas have got the capacity to do it.
Let's get to the budget.
Just get those capabilities.
I'm going to start from scratch. Number one, have we got a banking account?
Yep.
We have in our own name, in the sponsor name?
Yep.
And therefore, anything coming from Tātou will go in there?
Yep.
In their our name. That's number one. The next one is talking to the minister just the other day, Andrew Little. He's going to recommend that to the member of parliament. 45 must be the lowest number. He might get through with it, but that's his talk. You might pick up on that. It's only his thoughts that he told me, because he doesn't want a 16-year-old ending up in parliament and just sitting there way above his head. So we have to decide ourselves what our rangatahi to go to. Someone suggested 30, and I'm agreeing with that, because a 30-year-old may have got an account and he couldn't pay it, and he's gone through that exercise of saying, oh, gee, in a different world to me now, living on mum and dad to my own. 30 should be about the age of 35, and that's the rangatahi. And not only that, the 35-year-old will have a bit of knowledge of the wider world to help the rangatahi to get these things done. That's my thought. If the cluster can, even at this meeting, to suggest that put it through that the age for the rangatahi to be on our cluster is a certain age, that may help the other clusters to do the same. Because we're getting rangatahi, you know, I've got 138 mokopuna. We're all young.
But you, or yours.
Okay. What are we going to get out of here?
That's not a suggestion. I think if we get that finalised, then the rangatahi's got something to work. And they can pick their own members. They can say, oh no, our age is such and such. You're too old, you're out. You can
Thank
say
you.
that because it's in the-
Moves us into our membership, Papa.
Just a question. What is Tātou going to crop on?
So they'll advise by the end of this year.
Yeah.
What so that the third distribution become available at the beginning of this year for all Kāhui. So that was the last of the fixed distributions. So now with this year's distribution, bearing in mind that the financial year closes at 30th of June for everybody.
The reason why I asked is,
Yeah.
if we're gonna to look at how much it's gonna cost.
Budgets.
Yeah,
the
budgets.
cost of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not gonna see that drop until there's 5 years. We might have to look at. Right? So there's an option.
Yeah.
Just start one drop for now 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah. So I've got some numbers that we can talk to fairly shortly in the financials in terms of our thoughts around the funding, what income may be, and what's available for us to spend on our initiatives.
We got to look at any investments.
So that's part of that. Yeah, I'll talk about that in terms of that. Yeah.
Space.
Statement of investment policy and objectives.
Well, we're going to carry on and give our report, and then we'll discuss the general business, what we're going to do. Kāhui?
Just move on, just a quick update around our membership. So the validated members, so those are 18 plus, those that can vote. There's 1,145 that affiliate with our Kāhui. So that's either where their primary Kāhui or marae is within our Kāhui, or that's an associated Kāhui with them as well.
No, we're one of the high ones.
Sorry?
We got the highest.
I think, and it might be Rākoi Parker that's got a few more than us, but I think we're the second largest largest Kāhui in terms of numbers. Yeah.
Can we register? I've got a sister who's come back from Wellington after 50 years.
Yep.
I don't think she's registered.
Oh, kia ora.
We can check. It's still through. It's through Tato
Yeah.
Tato.
So the registration is Tato Tato. Yeah.
Tato
Yeah. So
Tato
you can
in the
either do
database.
that through the paper form, which is at the office, or online. Submit it that way there.
Our rangatahi may be able to help our.
So as well as that, we have 432 members who have registered that are under 18 years. So that's our pipeline of voting members there. But that was just a quick touch. Those numbers haven't changed a lot since our last update. They have gone up slightly, but not a lot. Hey.
Application to join.
Yep. Yeah. Always. Yeah. Encourage people to join us. So they're available online, Uncle, through the Tato Tato website, or you can call
Go to
into
the
the office there and pick one up.
That's good.
Yeah.
Right. So, yay, goody. So Tato Tato report. So our cousin Petey had asked, so what Lewis does is he sends an update out, and this is it's been a lengthy time since we received this one. So Petey's asked, so it's the same messaging going out to everyone that we referred to Lewis's report. It's a huge report. We could possibly speak about our deferred settlement property.
And we will do later. So there's, just the point that there's Kāhui that involved in a number of properties, deferred selection properties that have to be worked through.
And we only got the one.
And if we want to talk to any of us, we can take them up at the.
Yes. And if there is
Well, I wanna
any,
put this on you, fellas.
if there is any questions though that maybe come off that you may have, we actually can share them with you can email me and share them with Perry. Our rep. He's got a lot on his little heap. The horticulture space. We don't actually get a folder, this is not relevant. That space there, the horticulture space, but
Page
sorry,
3.
page 3. If we want to go page 1, that's the deferred settlement in regards to what they're currently doing.
So I'll give an update to our property after we go through this.
it.
Yeah.
On page 3, the purchase of the Kitchener Street, which is for those who live there, that is the old orchard or the egg farm. Tato's purchased that.
No, the orchard right next door to the co-partner. Once went back in 22 schools.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to know what kind of development. Put up here. No, I want any unwell people around that place. One of those are open school, and both of those schools, so
Strategy around it. That's the horticulture.
So the horticulture strategy, because we've got somebody there is running that.
Yes, yes.
Now changing the guard.
Yeah.
That should be of interest to us, the votes and the
Land use.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Mā Tangara Reserves Board, we have the chair today that's given a report. So the Sue's signing.
yeah, how come we didn't represent?
So,
I asked them that on. Where's TWNART?
Yeah.
What happened there?
So there was either Namu was so it was basically down to me as to whether I could make the time to go down to Wellington for the signing.
at the time though, that it wasn't about picking and choosing who that, because there would have been a number of that wanted to attend. I know, but definitely Uncle Walter didn't want to attend, and he definitely put that across to the table at the Kaumātua table, because there was only one that Tato was going to support, and the one that we were going to send through as well.
I just don't want to talk about. She's only young, from another Kāhui. She was kind of out of place because there were a lot of people there that hadn't been through the journey, and so they didn't know. They didn't know anything, what to do, couldn't even understand what was going on, because there were old people there, like they've been through the pain. I don't mean old people as Walter or old people.
The ones who've been through the journey.
So just in a nutshell, can you just explain what SES for those who don't know what SES is?
So it's our social and economic space. So that's our relationship with the Crown through them, with the ministry, MSD? Six of them that they're actually we're in a direct relationship with through our treaty claim space, which is
Ministry of Social Development.
Ministry of Social Development.
Ministry of the Environment.
Yes. MFE, MBIE,
NDI, Ministry of Business.
Ministry of
and
Business
Innovation.
Innovation.
Employment.
Ministry of Justice. Should be Ministry of Justice and MOE
Yeah, MOJ.
and MOJ.
Ministry of the Health.
No, that's a different stream.
So this is, social and economic revitalisation, I'm finding used to know what it's about, but, so that's the obligations on the
Crown to
meet their obligations.
with our
and
treaty
with
claim.
us as a
Yes.
treaty settlement.
That's correct.
But wasn't there a time that extinguished, and was there a time that came to an end? Is there any date for that?
No, not that we know of. But so when I went back to, those were some of the key questions when I had gone to Lewis to ask the Tato table is, what does that mean in regards to us as a kāhui? And what do we need? And so speaking with Lewis, he's actually wanting to say, well, what does it look from your point, and how can we bring the kāhui chiefs together to discuss how directly do we work with these ministries? If it's going through Tato, you would need to know what we want. So when he was flicking out of our po or our activities, how can we directly align ourselves? So I'm thinking from our MSD spaces with their funding, how can we directly get their funding without going through the other process that we have to sit on the sideline, and we can use this direction through our treaty frame space? So those are my questions to Lewis, because I was thinking of the positions that we may be looking at hiring, and how do we get their funding before we look at ours. So Tato haven't got the space, which makes it a little bit more harder for I'm just like our whānau, we're sort of pushing from this end.
So who is it, Lewis, that's driving that from Tātou?
That's correct.
They haven't got a manager to look after the service.
No.
Probably that's maybe a recommendation to make, because I don't, no disrespect.
And
I
I'm
think
just wondering.
he's got a job to do.
Yeah.
CEO. It's a big job. But they should, I know that they're playing quite a catch up, Tātou, because they're now creating positions that they should have had in place when they first
Right
started.
at the beginning.
But never mind, that's good. But could they establish, or it doesn't have to be a permanent position, it's just somebody, to manage that service, because if it's hard enough for them to understand, it's even harder to do that. I work
And I
with
just wonder if Benita's the one that's going to be leading that.
Well, I think
they can see what our
we don't know. So, but these,
But I think
so
the
these
recommendation-
nations, what's that thing, the thing that Benita's in, what's it called? The
commissioner.
commissioning agents.
yes.
Oh, she didn't mean-
Oh, that's Benita Keys.
Oh,
Benita
Oh,
Keys.
sorry, yeah, no, different.
It's
Sorry.
She's the project people.
Like the local
Okay,
commissioning
so
agency.
She might
She
have
might.
an answer on that, but
Yeah.
it would be important, I think, that, because we have got, development needs and employment needs and all that sort of stuff at the Kāhui and the community level.
Yeah.
It's just that we aren't able to articulate those through
Our
Lewis
through
and
Lewis
out the
too.
other end yet.
And I think that's probably why Lewis said to me, how do you think we can do that? Because that was the question that I asked. And that's probably why, reaching back to the saying, well, this is probably a best recommendation.
See, they should be able to get that position sponsored by a collection of,
Yes.
it wouldn't take much for MSD, MBI, those government agencies.
That's
to
just so
actually
right.
get a person and put that person in place with Tātou to tease out some of the issues. That's a
Yes.
good partnership thing.
Yeah.
So it may be that that's a suggestion to make too.
Housing would be the other one.
Yeah, it's looking at that as, because it's, so that'll be the social and economic revitalisation strategy from our point of view. Get them to get a point person, bring them out here. And
And I wonder if Benita Kāhui would be.
yeah, well, we can ask her.
Project lead, so we'll ask her.
That's a lot. Maybe.
So that
So, there's not even people. They haven't, established that,
Oh, yeah. That's took a bit long.
Yeah, no, that's why I was like, what?
In terms of both the SEARS and tripartite, our challenge and task will be how we move from talk to action.
Yeah.
Always the case, eh?
Get on.
Do it.
So that's another question. You can say, right, awesome, you raised it in your report.
Yeah,
Get on with it.
get on with it now. Right.
We can skip through the finance and audit one because we don't have Curry over here.
Well, he's the he's not here. Actually, he's not here for all of us. Thanks, Beauty. We did invite Lewis, but they have got their meeting on today, and he's just texted back to say that they're fully engaged in it.
Yeah, it's a research project. It's just the other way around.
Yes, it is, particularly around water.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
So who was the lead on that research project? Do you know?
That's Benita.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
don't.
because Benita, there's only a number of them that are in that space, and Benita's one.
What do you think is the number?
Like Benita, there's a, like, as far as we know, as employment, there's Benita clearing them Australia and the horticulture. Benita's the one that I'm unsure about where she actually sits.
Yeah, no.
And I thought it was around the project stuff that she,
So if that's a research project, then she'll be making herself.
available.
Find out what we're doing. We're doing exactly the same.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know much about it apart from reading what's there, but it looks like, that Tātou are very interested in putting in an application around that, around the whole why.
I don't know, my remark personally, I wouldn't want my cousin to be our entity to
I think what they say at the bottom part, the recommended option
Yeah,
is that like now it's only launches its own claim.
Yep.
It merges its separate claim with Ngāi because Ngāi have got lots of money and research claim. So if we merge the claim with them,
they can cover that cost in space.
yeah, but
It's
we've
about-
still got our own angle.
But we still
on
have
it.
our own angle and space in it.
yes, I think that's exactly the point. Awesome, no, that's good.
my interest, then they can't even.
So if we go into their annual plan, or their strategic stuff around their PO, if you look similar to that, we've aligned our PO to them
Certainly on a few things.
on a few things.
They're not doing.
And the reason being is that why should we be spending our
No,
resources of $1
some of
million
that's true.
when we can utilize the $100 million in that space? It should be a trickle down, or it should be a trickle up effect.
It's just to get on with it.
So the collective space on tangata with that housing strategy, we can utilize that in our space around there.
So probably in that housing areas where Kāhui, Tātou and council are getting together to, look at what the options may be for Whitehall. That everything's been set in stone there.
Making the regulatory more easier within the Papakainga space. Ensuring that that's what they are, the enablers should be enablers, so the council should be doing that. More in a feeding space from our Tātou is where it's our people that want the homes. And so there are other Māori organisations that are sitting at the table and have been since the creation of the street. And it's about the opportunity where we can work collectively and financially being able to do that for our whānau. So Tai Whenua, Te Whare Maire, Wairoa Trust Board, Kahuna Exec, Enabled Wairoa, Tātou, Wairoa District Council are all sitting at that table around the housing strategy and just trying to get a gauge on where we sit. And so Tātou have brought to the table the DSPs that they have in regards to the land that's available through DSP. Also the options around because we want affordable housing. We definitely need social housing because we don't have enough at the moment. Example, we have 85 on the waiting list for a house, but we only have 23 actual kind of order homes or Housing New Zealand homes available. So that 85 are not going to move very fast. So we need to create the emergency or urgency housing now, which is the social housing. Tata are more looking at affordable housing.
Yes, it's an interesting thing, because around the country, everybody's going after affordable housing because it's that almost middle class
Māori.
But that's not where the real need is. The need is
It's
there,
lower.
and that's the state housing kind of area.
Yeah.
But no one's thinking that because from a banking and from a building construction
Exactly.
point of view, you go after the ones who have got income, can afford the money, and so that's why there's nothing. So that's maybe a strategy.
Yep.
Housing thing here.
And so and then we look at our papakainga space, and because to enable our whānau is to ensure that they have the regulatory sorted. So that's that part of that group, is to ensure that so they're not jumping through hoops. Hence we only have like 3, I think, so far around Whitehall, is because of the hoops they have to jump through to ensure to get to the space. So we're trying to cut them down a bit more in the space. That's trying to make them a lot more streamlined. And in doing that, it's sort of each one of these entities sitting at the table need to take a lane and look after that lane.
So does that group, does that have somebody who's managing the social, the lower end?
Yes, enabled housing is doing.
So they've got someone doing that.
Yes, and when they're looking at hiring or doing a position overall to ensure these actions are actually get some feet on the ground. So that's one example around the housing with Tato, and it's only because we're fully engaged in that space.
So who's enabled?
Enable is currently, they look after our Enable Whitehall is actually a service provider. And they look at, yes, Shelley Smith.
Yeah,
and they work
Shelley
the
Smith.
mentals of the one,
Kiwi's
the
daughter.
health side in regards to alcohol and stuff like that. But they also took on for Whitehall the emergency housing. And so Kāinga Order has given them the opportunity. Kāinga Order is a new Housing New Zealand, MHUD. They've given them the new contract for building 10 new homes. On the flip side, there's not enough resources now. We don't have enough timber to build the homes, which we may need to go into fabricating and that kind of stuff. I know, see, that's,
Yeah.
but yes, so it's that.
So they need to look at the women, those pods and all those already created bloody buildings that are already made up, prefabs and all that stuff.
We have a couple of, I know that Whitehall has a couple of ones that are like Will Kiruru from EIT. He's building pods. He's now based out at the old Phoenix out at Awamati. So he's doing fabricated steel homes. Another one that I sort of watching the space is Trevor Mihairi. He's looking at building little cabin homes up. So, and then there's a lady that's just come into been in Whitehall. She's building her own 8 homes down the Queen Street. So there's things happening. It's just we need to get to this.
So that's the one point of contact, or the one source of truth, is that group that's like coordinating, and then underneath of them is Enable Housing or whoever else, the housing providers.
Yeah.
Because it's really that point that you've got people who haven't got housing, at low end, need the help, because everywhere else is being done.
Yeah.
So that's good, that's happening at the moment.
Yes.
On the housing thing, I know that very
Paul.
but I know what was it? Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good, but for me, I would prefer the full sharing or somebody comes up here and trains our own.
Yeah.
To run our own thing. I
Yes.
don't want to see outsiders coming in. They
Yeah.
come over here to themselves. I want somebody local to make people.
Yeah.
And that's our view too around those at the table. But obviously Paul's the one with with the mātauranga at this stage that we have to, bring up to. Hey? He's very much in that space.
Very much.
Yeah. No, that's his thing. And he was the one who assisted Pahuwera with their papakaiing project down there. Yeah. Okay.
Turn over, do you want to talk about the Pākihi order?
Yeah, so the Pākihi order there, digital SME boost, that's on page 7. So there's been a delayed start for that. What it was is a Tato in conjunction with Koro Digital have put together this program where it's open for any SME, small to medium sized business there to do a digital assessment of where their business or where their organisation may be at. So that's also open for Kāhui and Marae to participate in. So I've got an application in there for our Kāhui, and just waiting for that to be processed to see whether that's the direction that we want to go for our Marae as well in terms of their digital stuff. So it's taking a look at how these organisations engage with their people, what sort of tools they have to be able to do that. So even though I submitted that application some time ago, it still hasn't reached the point where it's going to start off.
So it says the program begins on the 30th of June.
Yeah, that's on the base. Yeah.
That's on the basis that they're actually.
So if people haven't applied, they've still got until that date to apply, but there's still some like our applications that are outstanding there that still have to be actioned.
So does it include
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so just from the commercial board in terms of what they may be looking at on a return.
Hello, interested in milk.
Was that Uncle?
Was it? No interest, no.
But still it's something.
Yeah. So they're ahead of their earnings there. As at end 31st of March, which would have been 3 quarters, they were looking at a net profit of 2.876 million. Which is, over $1 million ahead of forecast.
A very good decision to be part of the negative.
Yes, yes, yeah, it has those returns from it.
Can I just, how much was, what was the portfolio? Yeah, I know. Yes, it is. 100 million.
Yeah, so I think it was up around about 105.
105 million, I think.
Yeah.
So the net profit of 2.8 million.
Yeah, that's what it looked.
It's 2.8% return on.
Yeah, so in terms of their distributions, so whatever the net profit happens to be at the 30th of June, 60% of that will go back to Tato. 40% of that will go out to Kāhui to provide them with funding. Hey?
Was that net profit before distribution?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what they'd be looking at splitting, or a figure similar to that, splitting the 60-40. So what we're working on was that around about 1.4 I hadn't seen this till the other day, but prior to that, we were looking at 1.4 being the distribution to Kāhui. If you divide that by 7, then you're looking at, around the $200,000.
200,000.
That's not part of the first distribution.
No.
First distribution, which was at millions split over 3 years.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is one distribution.
Yeah.
So this is a distribution of profit on the 60/40 split.
Yeah, this is the ongoing
It's the
distribution.
ongoing.
So the distribution from last year, that was still tied into the first 3 years being, a split of $1 million there. So the one that will become available next year,
So what was
at
their
this stage is
return
looking at.
in comparison to the side grade of that? Yes, their expectation. Wasn't the side grade-
We have got it here.
That needs to be.
I mean, it's been a volatile year and having challenging markets. And that's a problem with setting size zones. Is that you commit yourself to a statement of your investment policy and what you're going to achieve. And so once you've established that, you then kind of hang yourself if things go a bit awry in the investment space, or you're challenged once you realise that things are going to go awry in that investment space with doing some other creative thing. Now, I know that people who invested in property, for instance, and I know that this is a, what do they call it, conservative investment strategy. Their statement of investment policy was on conservative things. So, but, there's been investment in property, which has realised something like 200% growth. It wouldn't have been all of this, but it may have been enough to bring that up to earning 5.8% of the amount that they started out with. It's just really, it's when you read things like this, it's not
Clear.
No, well, you've got to have a look at what the side base is.
Yeah.
What the performance has been, what the real results are, because it's good to
I love that you're
So in terms of their side boat,
this is how much.
Here you go.
true.
And give the reasons for it not performing as well. So the question would be, after 6 months, if you knew you weren't going to perform, why didn't you stick with that?
That's right.
Why didn't you start looking at it? And maybe they did, but we don't know.
But
And
then
so it's
coming
just-
back to this Kāhui, you'll bring up that in your financials?
Yep.
We are cyclone, is that?
Yeah, no, well, it's good that we're talking typos though, so we understand especially when we start talking about hours, in regards to some of the moving forward
So
around there.
well, I can understand a side note for big chunks of money.
Yeah,
I can't
not
understand it small
smaller.
amounts like our amount. I don't know. If it serves us at all well if you're looking at the smaller amounts, because
We have to look at our investments.
You certainly need to have it because it's around policies
it's
as
good.
well.
It's good.
as
That's
well
right.
as the
Your risk
objectives.
management policy.
How you're going about.
Yes.
So just to touch off on that, and for the rest in the room, I will go back to it when we have got a couple of slides on the side though. But Tato looking at 5.5%
Yeah.
on average over time. Yeah.
They've achieved it.
I don't know whether they've achieved that or not, and they're not going to tell
We're
until
not going to say anything.
the end of June.
As a car,
5.5.
as a car, you're sitting there and say, right, did you achieve that?
Yeah.
And if you didn't, why
Why
not?
not?
And volatility in the market is one thing. So what are you going to do about it next year?
Yeah.
If we don't want to come back. See, this is where you hold your commercial board accountable for performance. And if they come back again next year and say, oh, it's been another terrible year and we run at a loss, we anticipated, that's not good.
No.
And having bought the chair of commercial board into our
Sure,
discussions
hooray.
on our site, but
Yeah.
he's bricking it.
He's to work for us. He's a nice man.
So the one, we invited him to our one.
Very
and
nice.
then
Okay.
Cool. So I'll move it to my desk.
Yep. Sorry, no, it's not.
Yes.
No, just on Tato Tato, because we said we'd get round to, just for those who need an update on what the structure looks like, that's Tato Tato. No. The various arms though there that Tato Tato now have.
Different arms come this AGM, but I don't think so.
So I guess one of the reasons I put this in is the understanding around these Kāhui beneficial entities, and that'll come back into the financials. But just to understand that all of the Kāhui unit trusts of Tato Tato.
Yeah.
And you'll see how that's reflected in the financials.
That's like a shareholder.
Yeah.
Grunt.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll come back just to the one DSP that we have, which is around Mangapoiki. So just over 1,000 hectares there. At the moment it's being farmed through a lease as part of the wider Mangapoiki station. And just to note that last year we actually filed a notice of interest in it with LINZ. So where are we at with it at the moment? For the last, well over a year now, we've been engaged in discussions with Ngāi Tā Manuhiri, or the Trust Board, around this property. So the Crown put it in both of our settlements, that it was a property that came jointly. Certainly from our side, whilst we acknowledge the whakapapa links that Tā Manuhiri have to that area, we do question their claim based on mana whenua. And we've basically reached out to them and told them that we wanted to go through a mana whenua process with them on this block to ascertain who has rights over it. We're still waiting for them to respond to us on that position that we put forward of wanting to have mana whenua discussions. And I guess that will come in due course. In between sides, so there's reference to Kāhui couple there. So there's 3 Kāhui who are interested in this block. And there's ourselves, Whakikinui Arua, there's Tā Pukarau Whānui, and Tā Pukarau Mai Tā Whiti. So those are the 3 Kāhui who, way back when there was a 4th one, that expressed an interest in the property, and that was Tohono Nao Ngā Awa. They've since relinquished their interest and pulled out, so it's just left our 3 Kāhui. So in between our backwards and forwards with Ngāi Tā Manuhiri, we've been discussing as Kāhui between ourselves what this property's all about, or what are our respective Kāhui rights around it. So can you just put that down? Yeah, we've actually reached agreement between ourselves and Tato Tato on should we get to the opportunity to purchase, how that might proceed. And it's on the basis that all 3 Kāhui have asked Tato Tato to purchase the property on our behalf. There was also another tono that went in there that had been accepted that, so it's our Kāhui who think that we have more rights than others on that block. And that's because when that block was discussed in the Māori Land Court, it was actually put into the hapu of Ngāi Tahu and Ngāti Ruapani ki Iwitia. Ki Iwitia or ki Mangapoiki? Iwitia. And they happen to be hapu that reside with Iwitia Marae. So Iwitia Marae have been pushing the fact that, as far as they're concerned, they have mana whenua over that property. So we had somewhat of that discussion with the other Kāhui couple here, but in order to get to a way forward, we looked at what the outcomes that different Kāhui wanted from that block of land. So from the perspective of the iwitia hapu, what they really wanted was a education fund, that the profits from that block go into an education fund to assist Ngā uri of those hapu with their education. And in fact, it could end up being, so that was the purpose that was agreed to between Kāhui and Tātou around the.
So with the insight that, you know, who actually holds ownership of it?
It would be Tātou, because they're the ones who have forked over the money at the end of the day.
End up with everyone, all the shareholders of Tātou.
And that's sort of what I'm wondering is that, so they buy it on our behalf.
Yeah.
But then
So having bought into the, this agreement that we've reached, that the profits from the farming will be used for
Education.
just education.
Anybody?
No, for the whole of Tātou.
It's either that option or it goes back to the Crown and puts back out in the market.
So when was the last, I remember that you were able to way back to get grants from Manapoiki for education. So when did that disappear?
Are we talking about?
Years
Not-
ago.
Not from that block.
No,
No,
not
not
from
Not
this
from that
block.
block, because that block was
It was Pakia.
Crown had basically leased it to
Jigs Blake.
Jigs Blake.
and so they've been on there, but when Tāmanihiri were looking at it, they settled. They wondered why no rental had been, like the forest blocks, rentals had been paid, so you could take that rental and then purchase the property.
Yeah.
No.
So the question was asked at that stage, why was the rental charge to Jigs Blake?
Exactly.
And so that was one of the reasons it has to be purchased and cashed out of whoever's purchasing, so Tātou.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. If agreement, it can be reached with Tāmanihiri, but I know that they're pretty dominant.
Yeah. we know that.
Thank you, cousin.
Thank you.
Um,
We know that.
Yeah, so we are at a bit of an impasse because they've shared their thoughts with us on the matter too. So they're looking at 50-50, and we're not. So as Liz mentioned,
Never a 50-50, that got confused with them.
Well,
no, they haven't. That's
They
in
haven't.
fact what the Crown
Had put
had
on it.
bloody said in the settlement documents. That's what it comes down to. But as Liz said before, if we can't reach agreement with Tāmanuhiri on what to do with this property, then it will go back to the Crown. And, we have talked about, there's a couple of tactics that we do have up our sleeve that I'm not allowed to share with you at this point in time. But yeah, certainly if it does go back to the Crown, then we'll be doing our best to have discussions around purchasing it solely in that instance.
all of these pieces belong to Tātou, any of these pieces that purchase on behalf of whatever.
Yeah.
To stay with them. I don't see the point of them being involved.
Yeah, so in terms of what that, yeah,
In case, so what happens is, depending on like a financial space, Tātou purchase it and they have an agreement with the Kāhui on when they can purchase that back off. So it's about the timing and around the purchasing. That's one point. Another one is because we're so lucky that we're only a one DSP. The others have like 4 decision making around financially. What does that look like within the whānau of your unit standards that you're going to use to purchase all these properties? And sort of we're so lucky not to have that discussion inside of that.
Because you could use your equity inside of Tātou.
Tātou.
So each of us have got about 14 thereabouts.
Yep.
so
Yeah.
that's a shed.
Yeah,
And so you could have done it that way,
yes,
or you could have had Tata hold it and then the
Increments, yeah,
just slowly.
can slowly
purchase it.
Yeah.
purchase off that.
but where we wanted to get to the space to was where we didn't have to fork up that money, but we still had an influence on the
On the
outcomes.
outcomes of it.
So part of that has been that, the Kāhui will be represented on the management
Management
board
board.
for the property. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why we're still in the game. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's the
That
space
was
on
it
that one.
in terms of DSP Manapoiki. This must be you, cousin.
Oh, yeah.
So we did put that slide together for you.
So that, a lot's happened since then. So I'll just touch on those priorities for the Wairau Reserves Board. Lately. So with the wastewater discharge concept, there's three things happening at the moment. We've got the wastewater treatment happening, options on the treatment of our wastewater and Wairau. The wastewater consent option, there's conditions on that and the concession of the wastewater. I'll go into them. So the treatment, there's an alternative to the wastewater discharge to the other, and it's irrigation to our land. Now, we've got to devise something to be able to discharge the wastewater to the land. And there's things, technical stuff around that, how much do we discharge to the land, when do we discharge it, the cost of it, and storage costs as well. Those are the variables to consider. And of course, you've got the consent and stuff to do, and the legal costs. That's that part for the land treatment stuff.
Did they have a cost on it?
So I'm getting to that. So that's for that stuff. For the consent, we're up to what is it? Number 25. 25 of the changes. Number 25. And in that consent, so we've just come on board in this month, and I've inherited all the stuff from Tato reps. So I haven't been able to understand why Tato hasn't been able to make decisions when they were right there at the table on all the stuff that's we've ended up with. Because to me it was easy, but I don't know why they didn't make the decisions when they could. Now we've got the goal, we've got to go back to them, which I've got to meet them at 2 o'clock and give them our feedback and hopefully recommendation to the board to allow us to go back to our board, this board, and say this is what we want and Tato is wanting, because we're only representatives of Tato.
So is that for the wastewater discharge into the Wairau River?
Yes, yes. So there's three different things happening here. The treatment is one of them, which I've been through.
Yeah.
The consent on, do we agree to set up a body, a separate body, to represent Māori interests, or do we decline? That's the area of this consent. So, well, why did they even bother putting that in the consent when the Wairau Reserves Board is getting set up? So the Wairau Reserves Board should be the
Yes,
body,
yeah.
not set up another body to represent Māori interests. I couldn't understand that, why they went there. Because it's a legislative body, this body.
Is it a cultural, is there a cultural lens over this? So I asked that because the Māori board would be about how do we ensure that our cultural lens are always at the decision making at the table.
Should be this board.
It should be this
Because
board.
we're Māori representatives for the whole reserve board, which is from the ski club, just over the other side of the bridge, the Wairau Bridge, all the way to Mount. But anyway,
At this point, the
reserve board for the full.
For their name,
Or
yes,
Tātou
to represent Māori's interests, eh? Yeah, in that,
There's no one who legislates in Parliament. Don't know
why
why
they,
is that a board is coming on.
yeah, why they even putting it in the consent, one of the conditions.
It'd be interesting to find that out. I mean, I'm as interested in the timelines, because I know that, you know, some of these, you've got to sign them, you've got to sign them off
Yes, so,
initially,
yes,
because water's still got to go somewhere, right?
yeah, yeah, so we've got to the end of this month, 30th of June. So that's why we've got to take it back to, I'm on the agenda at Tato this afternoon, 2 o'clock. But it's good to bring it here because I can get your fellows, in agreements or not, on that part, agree to set up the body, another body representing Māori interests, which won't be legislative. But basically we're just doing the groundwork or decline. The next one is the concession of this outfall pipe. So the discharge of the wastewater out into the river, that's the other one, part of the same concept. And that's to either approve a proposed extension of a new pipe across the reserve, because this pipe is in our reserve, and it's up to the council to get it out. So throughout the motu or our rohe is everyone's the consensus is nobody wants that pipe in the river. Nobody wants that wastewater to go in the island. So the council have got that now. All right, this was before we came on. The other thing is to approve a modification of the existing one. No, the existing outfall pipe. And extending it.
So
Just doing a band job for now, in the hope that we in council work on the land treatment one, like taking the waste to the land. Yeah,
The trees.
that's right. Yeah.
But that means there's a Band-Aid job.
can I just say, Liz, that initially around 6 or 7 years ago when we discussed this and we came to our whānau here at the table at Te Rauhina, it was we wanted out because it's just over here.
So those were normal, all Kōrero from Maira North and up until now, and now the reserve board is up there running an active. They've got no choice. So that's where we're at. So the reserve board last week, we decided as a group, so on the reserve board, there's 3 councillors, district councillors, and there's 3 Tātou representatives, and I'm one of them. And the other 2 are the other 2.
Who's the other two?
Michelle Mingleroy and
Oh,
Katarina Kaurana.
There's the other board there sitting on there too. There's a committee.
It's just us 6.
That's all these
That's
basically.
the Mātauranga Reserve Board,
Yeah.
the Wairau Reserve Board, yeah. It's just 6 of us.
So who are the other 3 on that? Sorry. Who are the other 3 on that?
Michelle Mingleroy and Katarina Kaurana.
Yeah, and who are the other 3?
Oh, sorry, so you've got the mayor, Craig Little, and Denise Eagleson,
So-
and Paul. So Paul Kelly, because he used to be part of the multi-standing committee, hang on, because he started the multi-standing committee and I've knocked him out, because I'm on the multi-standing committee now, he has to outrun his time. Right, and then the council apparently going to relook at their structure. Because I said to Craig, well, at least not put a multi-standing committee member on it, because I'm on it, and I'm already on the board, but you know, you best go for one of your ward councillors, one of your Māori councillors. Oh yeah, that's a good idea, so I don't know what's going to do. So Paul is just there, he's there, he's just there, councillor. Yeah, so he agrees with everything.
So those other 3 positions are council approved
Yeah, 3
positions.
councillors and 3
3.
Tātou.
Tātou.
That's probably why they've suggested a separate Māori input, because you have to agree you're operating within a constraint of a legal framework. And you need some heavy hitters out on the outside, because nothing's going to change. I mean, I was involved in.
Well, I
I've
don't
been
know.
involved in wastewater in Gisborne,
Yeah.
and they took them years. But one of the things that shifted them was to say the Māoris are going to put a cap on the end of their pipe. And so we need the council and central government to come in and help us to finance the huge amount of money it's going to cost to put in something other than what we've got at the moment.
So because the Three Waters is in the background, right?
It's extreme, but I mean, it's a message that we get. It wasn't, and we weren't going to do it. It's just really.
But that's what you would need to do to ensure that it
To be
actually is
honest,
going to
I
move.
don't think us having that board unless we get that board to do all the donkey work, like do all the groundwork, like go out and do your consultation and stuff and come back to us. Go and come up with a plan and do this. To me, I think that's unnecessary.
My value is to ensure that through you, that our voice has been heard.
Oh, it's
And
been
so,
good.
and that, but that's to me, that's the eyes of us Māori, if we're going to create it, because that's what it is. It's around ensuring that our lenses are over everything. I'm just saying.
I'm just thinking of you turning up, that's all. So I am there, and it's good that I'm the chair, because my other two mates, they're on a personal kaupapa, and they can't focus on the mahi at hand. So I have to steer them and get them to come with me to do this mahi, because to me it's simple. And we've got options on the table now as to whether which one we approve of. Now, we've approved in principle until we hui with Tato today, that we go with the modification of the existing pipe and the extension, and while we work on this land-based option, right? That's it. And but we ain't got no time frame yet. So my thing is to come back, and I'm going to recommend to Tato that we go back to them. We agree to that second option with this time frame on it.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Yep. Go to that land.
But who are you going to have in your meeting hammering the table and saying, put a cap on it, shut the bloody, because you actually need someone rattling.
Yeah,
I
right.
know, so
Yeah.
we want the Tato reps who works on them getting the pipe out, right? The pipe's coming out regardless,
In 10
because
years.
it's in our reserve. It's in our reserve, so
Awesome.
we're there, and so that's where we're at with that. Because the option one of approving a new pipe to go in is going to cost 2.4 million, and the expectancy life of that pipe was 30 to 50 years. Option two is estimated at 400K. So we're thinking 400K, just band-aid it and use that 2 mil for
Do the
option on
land
the
solution.
base.
Yep.
Put it to that.
But do you have that money available?
What?
Is that 2 mil available, or is it just?
That's going on
Because
your
it's
rates.
It's gonna be a
Going on your rates.
But
That's going on the
Three
rates.
Waters there, in the background, they are, we're potentially going to get 60 mil on that. 60 mil.
Sounds good.
So we're trying to tag that 60 mil to this land-based option.
Cool.
So my thing for this, hui is, and I'm glad I'm here, is to ask, the reserve board needs direction from Te Rauhina Marae, their aspirations for the number because our priorities are one, the wastewater. It's not in any order, but the wastewater is there now. The two is the two lagoons, Whakamahia and Ngāmotu. The Rangi Hoa Hill. So I've asked for this table to send a letter to HBRC to explore and investigate options to stop that hill from scouring, from eroding, to come up with an option. Because we've got HBRC working down River Parade by the ferry where the old toilets used to be. The old at the ferry, they're going to do that bank. They're going to put sheet pile on there to stop it eroding, and that's happening very soon. So this year. So I'm going to ask for that option to happen in Rangi Hoa Hill, so it stops scouring. That is supposed to have gone a lot of that, and discharge. So they're going to be taken to court for their illegal discharge of stormwater to the awa. But that's not my thing. It's not the stormwater, it's that other crap that they are discharging to the water. So we've got to look at that. So while I'm here at Te Rauhina, I'm going to ask what's your fellas' strategy for the Ngāmotu lagoon, so I can take it back to this
I think,
Are you going to have to tell me now? Can you send me something?
no, one of the key
So we can
things,
carry on?
one of the key things that you need to know though is that when Ngāmotu sits the lagoon, we actually filtering the shit that comes through. And then, so when it's raining, like storming like it has been, and they decide to close the mouth, it backs up. So the effects that's happening on the kettle out here is they drink that water once it slides out. So the crap is still sitting there and stagnant. These are some of the key things that we've been pushing for years. And so, and that's the same with the output in the middle there, is once the output, because when they go out on a high tide and you're blocked up over there, so what happens? It backtrack to our land space along here.
So I need something from you so that I can push it through this board here. Because
I
this
think
wastewater thing is going to be over the 30th of June.
You talked about the 400,000 about the
Water.
Band-Aid,
Yes,
Band-Aid, there was the existing one for now, and build the land. Factory.
oh no, they need to purchase the land so that we can bloody
Well, for
discharge.
purchasing that land, because it works overseas, they've got factories where they build pumps into the factory, and they process it into whatever, manure or whatever.
So the council is going to do a day visit up to the wastewater treatment plant, and yeah, I'll try and put it out in this Kāhui, who might be available to come for that, because they've done some amazing work, the council. And you'll probably, anyone living in town there will understand and appreciate it doesn't flood anymore. No pipe.
No backtracks.
Things, wastewater,
No bubbling.
things bursting. They haven't for a few years now because of the infrastructure and upgrading. Touch wood.
Touch wood, touch wood.
We had a few delages. Just the rivers come up, that's all.
I'm sure from an Australian's point, I can email
You don't
her.
want to spend too much money on that existing part.
No.
Because you could spend money on the factory.
That's right, and that's what our thinking is, that's why we're going with the Band-Aid fix for now, and spending money on the land-based option.
Ka pai, Liz.
So by that's it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, I agree with that. Band-aided, but get to work on it.
Time frame. Yeah, and give it the time frame, yes. So we won't sign off this evening on my recommendation to parties, and we won't sign this consent unless we get a time frame.
Yep.
And I think Tato will put some money towards this factory. We were talking about it when I was.
Oh, right. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
So what's your timeframe going to be?
10 years.
Well, I think 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I think that should be out of the it'll take that to organise.
5 years with a review,
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yes.
so that you can see some action.
Okay, I'll take that.
Because otherwise it just goes on and on.
Yeah, okay. 5 years.
5 years. And you get charged extra for all of the nutrient coming into the
We don't get anything.
Yeah.
Once upon a time when it was solid cup of tea, you used to take it over to the mayor and throw it on the table.
Because if water comes right underneath it, right up to the river.
Yeah.
It's like a run down a river. Like a river next to the river.
Because that's a health and safety thing.
Is that,
It's right up to-
that's in your fellows report, on the impact on the.
Yeah.
on the,
Yeah,
Time wine and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
we've done that. We've got it in our, we've got it, council's already got our concerns hand typed over, but I'll write you one.
Right.
Give it to me, so, because they don't think they're regarding it.
That's all that's.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the highest part of the number to
Mm.
never comes to
Just like you
The
said.
issue is when it resides, like when it floods and it goes out, the cows that we have around, like see them, Uncle Arthur goes out and they're actually
I
feeding
know,
us
our
that
cows
stuff.
are getting blooming blamed for being in the water, when the water's coming to them.
That's a bit unfair. Okay, thank you for the
Thank
update,
you.
Liz. Yeah.
Moving on.
So I'm
So
just
a
gonna,
report from Te Rauhina, please, that's all I'm asking.
cool, noted.
Noted.
let's move on to our financials. So the snapshot was taken 10 days ago, so we could prepare it for the report. So our end of financial year is the end of this month. So won't be too much more activity happening on the account. But anyway, this is just a profit and loss view of our accounts there. So I thought I'd present this because it talks about income and expenses. So there's 2 years up there, this year 2021 as opposed to last year 2022. So if you're just looking at income there for this year, we had some term deposits on money on term deposits, but that's paying extremely low returns at the moment. And then we've also got in there other revenue of 5454. That other revenue is the balance of the entity that existed before our trust. So Whakaki Nui Aroa, going back to the days of Uncle Walter and the initial trustees before we actually set up. We'd got funding from Te Whakaemi. That was the residue of it before we established ourselves 5454. So that's gone in there. Next down, you'll see that there's nothing in there for this year's distribution. So the reason for that is that we made a decision to bank our distribution. So when I say bank, that is not take it for our bank accounts. We reinvested it in Tātou Tātou. I've got another slide that follows this I'm going to speak to that goes through the reasons of why we decided to do that. But that's why our income is looking extremely low for 2021, just under $7,000. So going back to this business of being a unit trust in Tātou Tātou, that got reflected in our books last year. We see this other income that come to us in 2020. There was 2,600,000 and almost 45,000 that had to do with investment income and revaluation. And then there's the settlement assets of 15 million and 55,000. So just looking at those two figures, the settlement assets are our 1/7, because there's 7 of us, Kāhui, of the quantum with the government, which was $100 million. The 2.644 million is 1/7 of the profit that was made on that initial distribution in 3 years that Tātou Tātou have been up and running. So that gives us our overall total income of 17,700,000 last year, which forms the majority of our asset base.
So that's all sitting in Tātou.
That's sitting in our books. So it's been quantified in our books, but it is managed by Tātou Tātou.
But for practical purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's sitting.
For
Yes.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
saying that, what have you got access to?
Yeah, of that bit there, nothing.
So that's good, but that means
Yeah.
that that's good, because it's the asset base as part of our commitment.
The commitment.
Yes.
Serves us, whatever.
That's right.
That's good.
That's right.
Awesome. So so what we've got in our accounts currently.
Okay, we'll get to that. I'll just go through the expenses side first, and then we'll take a look at the balance sheet view of it, which tells us how much we've got in our bank account. So these are our expenses over the 2021 year, and I'll just talk on a few of them. So this advertising is advertising, that's for our hui and such. Beneficiary engagement is when that money is being paid out in terms of So through TWNART Ka and through the Kāhui, we did the firewood drops out to Marae. So some of that money, the expenses of doing the firewood drops and processing, our trust said that Marae could actually claim those expenses back from us. So that's that $868 isn't there to do with the firewood expenses, firewood processing expenses. Consulting and accounting, that's for both our accounting and auditing services as well, and we're looking around that figure each year. Eh? So TWNART Ka are our accountants in town here, and this year we've actually changed our auditors this year. So it was Coates Associates last year who did them, but we passed a motion at the AGM to change it to BDO up in Gisborne. And the reason for that was just to bring it in line with other Kāhui who are also using BDO for their
We thought we
auditing.
might get it to the deal, not.
Yeah, they had similar expenses to Coates Associates in terms of how much they charge. Yeah.
So consulting, it was more, is that accounting, was there a consulting part of it as well? Was it mainly accounting?
No, that's just happened to be it's all accounting plus auditing. Yeah. Yep. To officialise our books, that's what it's going to cost us, about $6,000 a year. Yeah. The election expenses refer to an election that we had for Whakaki Marae representative in December. Yeah, and then catering was pretty much to do with the hui that we have here, as well as our AGM as well. And then there's also printing. There was one of our hui that was filmed last year, which came as an expense. And then there's also the venue hire, so that's the figure of $500 that we pay out to Marae. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was two different huis that time.
Yeah.
There was the election-
So hui refers to anything like this Kāhui hui, or our AGM is also considered a hui. Whereas elections, because we had, I mean, they just happen to be categories that are in our expenses now, because the first year we were up and running, we had a whole lot of election expenses having to through it. So we were just categorising it into the right areas.
And that external one was run by election that guy.
Yes, Putty.
That's
Putty
right.
elections.
Which is really good. I mean, it's.
Yeah. So
we'll
the
continue to
external,
utilise the
that
external,
one there, 1522 is Putty election services coming in to run the whakaki. Yeah, my Hannah. Yeah, no, he's really good. Yeah. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Let's go back. So Koha, so $41,000. That's reflected in two marae payouts of $20,000 each. So, and I'll explain that. So that was to Whakaki and Te Rauhina, those two $20,000 payments. Iwitia asked us to hold on to theirs for the moment because they were going through the process of having an AGM. So we're still waiting for instructions from them on, you know, when they want us to pay out that 20,000. But that 20,000 was to each marae was the decision that we reached at last year's AGM.
Hey, thank you very much for that.
No, it was our pleasure. So the other $1,200, $200 of it was a koha to Tāmanuhiri for we've had meetings both here and over in over the hills there. So that was the $200 was a koha to them. The $1,000 was that Whakaki Marae asked for sponsorship of our fishing competition. So we brought that on board and agreed to be the main sponsors for the fishing comp there.
Money well spent. I hope you didn't push from that. No, it's
The locals did.
we had heaps of participation from our whānau beneficiaries that do the kids.
Yeah. So the legal expenses were tied up from some advice we sought from Chapman Tripp around our trustee. So that was to do with a couple of things. One was around the form of voting, and the other one was around trustee elections. So yeah, pretty expensive advice. Don't speak to my advice is don't speak to the lawyers as least you can as possible. Yeah, and then salaries, which are the payments to the three of us trustees. So we're all getting paid $24,000 a year. Subscriptions, so we have subscriptions to things like Zoom and Dropbox so that we can do all of our admin stuff. So that's covered under that area there. Trustees' expenses, large portion of that was with Joanna because she does a lot of travelling down from Auckland.
And accommodation.
About 3 visits over the last year or so. Yeah, in her accommodation. So all in all, that comes up with a for this year, just looking at a operating deficit of just under 131,000.
You scroll up, we can't see it.
Oh, sorry, it's on your.
Oh, it's on the sheet.
Put it at the top. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Let's move it.
Yeah, it's on one slide.
You got it? Okay. And if we have a look at it from just a balance sheet perspective, so what we've got in the bank is $452,500. And then there's the KBUs, the Kāhui beneficial units that are also owned by us. So yeah, add those two up and the trust just has assets just over $18 million. So just to be clear, we can't get at that, or yeah, we can't get at that $17,700,000, $17,700,000. If we wanted to get at it, we'd have to have the majority of our members decide that that's what we wanted to do, and then give notice to Tātou, none of which we're looking to do. But to answer your question, Cuz, what's in the bank is $452,000.
Just looking at it, the first fee was 15 million. I think it's gone up 2 million.
Yes.
Gone up,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's growing.
It would be stupid to pull out.
That's right.
We would indeed, especially after us having a look at our what our investment
Opportunities are.
policies and objectives may be, which I'll get to.
Just a question, I guess. So we've got 452.
Yep, 452,500.
Yeah. And actually, you've got a liability of 220,000. But with the extra money, it's going to have to go out to you.
Yes. Yeah.
But so based on if the expenditure this year was, what was it, 131,000? So if you use that as an indicator of how long we're going to survive at that level of expenditure, taking 5 years. Less than 5 years. If we don't, and so so we haven't got an income generation strategy or somebody, that's what's important about their funder person.
Yeah.
Because that, we could be finding funds to offset some of the.
Yeah.
costs.
Yes.
And so as we move, we're moving pretty fast. As
Just-
we move out, and you're pointing out, that's definitely where we've been projecting around, what does it look like over the next 5 or 3 years? 5 years.
Yeah,
3
so we took it out 3 years. So
Yeah.
this is the exercise that we did ourselves,
And that's
Richard,
what-
and looking
yeah.
at what our income and expenses may be over the next 5 years. And this helped in us making a decision around, on what to do with the third distribution.
Just got a thought, you know how if we leave the Mamapuki with Tato Tato, that means we're gonna have no property, eh? The Kāhui. We need some land.
There are definitely benefits to having land. You're right there, which is around tax interest rates. Yeah. So this has been a discussion with Lewis. He thinks that there may be opportunities that arise with all the DSPs to invest in land for other Kāhui.
Is that in our-
No, that's only a discussion. So
No, in our Kāhui, what we want is-
yeah.
Yes, that's another thinking. We are thinking about other opportunities that we can, knowing that we only got one DSP, knowing that there are other Kāhui out there who have got the opportunity to
Land
purchase.
is way away then.
Yep, and so having those discussions, but we got to wait to see where the process is at or what they're doing. But we are definitely talking about opportunities that we can maybe engage in that space. And it is, that has been pretty much one of our discussions around.
Yeah. So and
On the table.
And speaking, so we've reached out to a couple of knowledgeable people and trying to develop our SIPO. One of them's Tony Gray, who heads up the commercial board, or who's the chair of the commercial board. No,
No.
the Aroha. So when we were reviewing their Tato SIPO, we quizzed them about that, and also other advice he could give. The other one that we hit up based on the Aroha was a Whanona Lee Gray. So Lee Gray is a partner with Deloitte. He specialises in the sort of like Māori investment field. So that was the advice that came from him around, well, you may want to think about investing in a little bit of land just so that you can take advantage of the tax breaks. So for those who don't know, at the moment as a trust, we pay 33% tax. If you own Māori land, then you're a Māori authority and you pay half that tax.
So the marae is not part of that.
It's Kāhui. That's from the treaty came
So
to.
the marae in the Kāhui. The three marae.
It's the beneficiaries.
own their own land.
It's the whānau
Yeah.
that are in the beneficiary whānau.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are with Tato. We, as a process, we work through marae though, but it's the beneficiary that actually.
I'm talking about the land we have in our Kāhui, which is the marae.
Which belongs to Marae, not to the Kāhui.
That's where I'm sort of alluding to.
Yeah.
Did Lee give any advice on plonking money into a charitable trust instead of paying tax?
Yeah, but he did caution that, you know, if you put it into a charitable trust, then you can only spend it on charitable type activities.
Yeah.
Which because it's
Yeah.
tax and you lose it anyway. There's not I don't see that as a way.
Yeah, to
negative.
our activities, yeah.
30% anyway to tax. If you put that into a charitable trust, and then can use it on training programs, leveraging other funding. You're doing that sort of thing. I mean, it's got to be in our phones.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking because in Muriwa, we use the tax on our interest, put that into an account and use that to leverage getting $2 for a dollar for DIA at that stage
Ah,
to build
yes.
their ablutions and stuff that we didn't want. So
Right.
it cost us nothing. It cost us the value of the tax
Thanks.
and then leveraged $2 for each dollar we had in that account
Right.
to purchase our $1 million worth of renovations at Whittiwa. So that cost us nothing. But so that was one of the things that I really. Yeah. Using it. No, but we've still got money. Yeah. So anyway, I was just looking at an alternate. Because
No,
when-
paying less,
Or
yeah.
paying less
Well, that's
tax.
no tax, that
Yeah,
is,
that's
rather
zero.
than half tax, yeah.
Because we've got charitable trusts, we don't want to note that, like a key, but
Yeah.
you could actually have that as a charitable trust for us,
Set
because
that
there
up.
may be some funding that the Whakati Nui Aroa wants to raise that they won't give to Whakati Nui Aroa. but they
Yeah.
might
Yeah,
give it
right, give to a charitable trust. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of Whakati Nui Aroa as an operating entity that could in its own right start generating income, because the modelling that you've done, there's no income stream for that apart from what we're earning
From the distribution.
in Tātou
Yeah.
distributions, and you want to do something with that. So, and that may be something that might be helpful for Whakati. It's just a thought, because it may be a smarter way of doing what we're going to be doing going
Anyway.
forward, and it'll push out that the amount of money we've got in the bank that it can generate. And it gives us optionality over the other things that we're thinking of doing, if it's housing or all the other bits involved, that person that we want to employ.
Yeah.
Get them running out there and hunting down, what's it called, a shotgun tactic, hunting for anything that moved and breathed.
Like funding.
You just go up. And you've got some very clever people, but there's a lot of money around at the moment to do a whole raft of things. And housing is one. That's in the lower socioeconomic. Well, we've got a Wairau-based group doing that. Fantastic. Find out what they're doing, but then identify the needs that we've got in our Kāhui and see if they're being met.
Met at that end. Yeah.
Of the population base sucks all of the energy and time, because it's a big mass of people in Wairoa. We're just out here.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just some thoughts about, how we manage our way forward.
Yeah.
And capitalise on stuff that we can do or generate some more income.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the salaries, because that's half of our outgoing.
Yep.
The trustee salary. And, if we're looking at it, getting somebody to do admin and possibly funding, I'm kind of wondering whether then do we cut down your salary because
To
we're
do
gonna
that.
take a chunk of your work away from you guys. You need that work
Yeah.
to do your own stuff. I just sort of think that there may be sort of a bit of new work.
And I guess that's
Yeah.
why you said earlier, right, you want to see those outcomes of how much, everyone's getting paid, and you're probably never going to get paid enough. I can go back to
Yeah. No, that's right.
And I don't want to go back, it's not a nice place.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess when we, went out and did got the advice on remuneration a couple of years back, and we had the discussion with the pay people. We had what was suggested, and what we agreed with was that we had an initial amount of setup work to do,
Yeah.
which from a governance perspective was going to take us a bit of time, but that over a period of 2 to 3 years, we won't have that volume of work because we
No.
are in a governance role, not an operations
That's
role.
why it's so important for us to get funding.
Yeah.
The funding is good.
Yeah.
Cover it all.
So we do expect our, not that we've discussed it in any detail, but our remuneration will be less once we get out of all the things that we need to establish. But we're not all that far away from that point in time.
When that happens, that's going to be yay.
But in terms of putting in funding for, to get that person on board there, we have a look at the project spend that's coming through that line. So on all the activities that we've scoped out in our PO.
They've read marks, budgeted that amount for the next 3 years.
And that's providing that, that's based on the fact that that mahi isn't going to get funded. Obviously, if it does get funded, then that's going to be a whole less of
I think
an
it's like what
amount
you said
there.
about the contingency. So we did put that contingency
Yeah, well,
aside,
that's good. But,
and
Yeah.
we based it on the period of, look, what does it look like over the next 3 years if we have this amount of money only and not have to go out and seek.
I see you've done also in the business as usual, that first line, you've reduced that from 107 this year to 90.
Yeah, and that's to that. Well, the main hit for that was the marae. We're not expecting to do another distribution to the marae over the next 3 years.
Until we pick up. Well, no, I think that, and I think though, in essence though, is because what our actions coming out in our activities, and we're hoping that that will regenerate a lot of stuff within our marae space that isn't coming.
Well, I think that project spend that you've put in there is quite good, because if you can get somebody with their salt in there, you might find your bottom line starting to lift it.
Yeah.
Because they could attract more funding.
Yes. Yeah.
So it may be that, and I'm thinking of Whakakinuia as an entity in itself.
Yeah.
Going forward. So you've got this huge amount of money invested, and you're going to get drops from that.
Yeah.
But in itself, generating income. Being a facilitator for, and it may be, there's maybe some developments that happen around our area.
Yeah.
That you got, or that the entity is part of, and capitalises on, charge to them and renewables development, whatever it is. But starts cranking things up, because it's that action on the ground that, goes in fits and starts. And people start stuff up, and it's hard. There's a lot of opportunity. It's just really matching that with support.
Yeah, so
It doesn't stop you from having a commercial round too. People if you invest their money.
yeah. So I'll talk to that more when we get to the SIPO, but around the SIPO. But yeah, you're right there. You're right there. So balanced against that was we took a very conservative view of what we thought our income may be. As you say, our income is based on the distribution from Tātou. So even though we may be looking at 200,000 as being distribution for this year, we've only baked in 100,000 in our budgeting. But we just wanted to make sure that we weren't putting ourselves in a not so good position if we were going to make this decision to reinvest. So based on our discussions around it, we did make the decision to reinvest, and that's with and that will happen when we get our year end. When the year end calculations are done on KBUs, then we'll be able to see what that money is translated into.
So you've made the decision on the 352 distribution.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's to buy more KBU. So that has an ongoing impact. So if other Kāhui haven't reinvested, if they've taken their money out, then we're going to get a bigger slice of the pie coming back to us, and that sort of
So
increments each year.
Yeah.
Because it has got effect, it will give us greater benefit.
Is it?
Yes,
And
yes,
that was
because we get a
basis-
bigger share of the pie because we hold more shares than other Kāhui do in it. No, it'll be.
Is it confirmed, that figure?
Hey?
Yep.
But they're confirmed.
the 352s. That's what we've invested. We don't know how many KBUs that turns into.
But
It'll
we
be-
went through a meeting with Tony Gray. We went through a lengthy process on discussions. We went through our budget, and then we actually slept on it. This has been like months of decision around it, and sort of come back to the table, and just thought it was a strategic move to do that. And looking at this, like the forecast that you see for 3 years, that sort of hung on. We know that we know we've got a position coming where we're going to try and find funds. So we know in the essence that money's going to come in that sense. We know that we want to look down at investing, but at this time we would have just had it sitting in our account earning zero, and the council once we get the investing up, and that was because Tony was able to show us through their fund market what how to the commercial part and what possible, and where they currently are at the moment. So we were just like, they're not, well, as you can see, they're not doing very well.
See, Tony's he's a conservative commercial guy. He was on the board for Eastland Group. The chairman was and we had a CEO who was what they call a growth CEO. He's still there at the time. So Mentor took us in 5 years from being $200 million to $400 million. So he grew the thing. But he was, they were holding him back. Because
And I think
they're trying to be
you should
conservative.
say that, because I think that's exactly what's happening here in Tato. It's been very conservative.
Yeah.
Which is a good, I think his instructions have been to be conservative.
Yeah.
And so he's the right person for that. So I get Tony's really, he's good like that. But at some point, Tato is going to have to, when the markets open up in COVID, they're going to have to get into a more aggressive mode. This will be to pull Tony out. That's where a totally Tato.
Yeah. Even Tony was saying that Tato are very conservative in their investment approach, and being a conservative man himself. So that was the,
Oh, no, that's good, thank you.
Cool.
I'm just mindful, Simon, that I'm going to take off shortly, so.
Okay.
I'll just.
Your text list.
We'll try and zoom through the space.
Oh, so the first,
Yes.
Gee whiz.
Let's skim through this now.
Somebody's been talking too much. So there was just a quick update on our PO, and we've heard the message. You fellas just got to get things up and running.
Yeah, thank you very much.
But there are definitely, we would dearly love to do that. We do have some challenges, and I'll say that it's some of the work that we're looking into. There's the same sort of thing is being looked into by other Kāhui as well as Tātou. And for those sorts of things, we think we want to take a collective approach. No. But anyway, just looking, these are our 3 PO here. So this is all part of our strategic plan. And these are some of our objectives within those 3 PO. So I'm just going to, these are the activities that we had mapped out under each of those PO. So Tai, I'll hand this one back over to Namu.
Yep, so it is with Tato currently coming in and running the wānanga. They're saying as a collective point, they can go and get funding for all of us, for all of our Kāhui. So we're now wanting to know how do we leverage off that. So it is about a discussion within each marae, and then as a Kāhui ourselves, who are our champions within our environmental champions, but we need to represent us at sitting at these tables for us. So at least they are the ones, they're the best put there, because they actually will fight the fight they need to for each one of our marae. So the tile space there is what is currently Tātou doing, how can we leverage off their funding? If not, we have opportunities of going and getting our own funding and just feeding back but it is a feeding back. If Tato is hopefully be saying they're doing this within the title space for us, then we should be looking to see what they are doing. And if not, then, and if we have our own, like out at Whakakī, for instance, if they have their own kaupapa, how do we support each marae in regards to the
Madam Chair,
kaupapa space?
just before I go, I just want to comment that nothing's happening at Tato with that, so I'm hoping you fellows will take the lead on that. And when Benita does turn up, I hope you fellows can tell her that. And this is where we're at. Kia ora, ngā mihi.
So it may be that some of us have already been 3
Yes.
years in the field doing our work, not reflected, supported, or anything. from
Yes.
Tātou. So there's stuff as there is in every area running, and so Tātou has got to have somebody in place. First of all, understand what's happening on the ground, and then to complement what's happening on the ground, because you could spend a shitload of time researching and only to be told at the end of 3 years that there's all this stuff that's been going on anyway and they need support now. This is that immediate kind of thing. So the researching, fantastic, but that should be alongside of action, and the action should be about looking at what's happening at the moment. See, like issues like here, like the tutai coming into the thing, that's a big issue. Our big issue is cow shit and stuff in the lake. There will be other issues as we go along, and we're already in there in the mix, and so that's really the action side of the strategy, and great to have the strategy and to do all that sort of stuff, but it's really capitalising on what's happening right now, getting it kind of target. It's a big grunty machine. It's holding $17.5 million for our funds. So that's where we need to have an expectation at the table of what they're doing about the here and now, as well as about thinking about the future. We should be using their grunt to leverage Ministry of the Environment, to dock, all that sort of stuff. Actually, and some of those agencies, like Hawke's Regional Council, are right in there at the moment.
So from that title one, and that was one of the actions too, was they have to go out and meet current people who are currently doing the do, and especially in our regions, which is like Whakakī Lake Trust. They said no, we haven't got to see them yet. There are a number of others, I think, that are doing work.
Is that what this woman?
Her job is supposed to be going around doing that kind of stuff. So the timeline that I asked for them was just to come back from that hui, which was in April. I haven't had any feedback. And so I've been pushing it directly with Benita about what's happening with the actions that we put in front of you. So it's like that.
Excuse me, we have to go.
She's got
Oh,
my auntie.
apologies, Auntie. Yeah, no, we didn't realise it was getting on so late.
Yes.
So just a record history mātauranga. So there's a similar activity to this in our tangata as well. But that's a pātaka mātauranga. And this is another one where all of our kāhui have the same need as well as tātou. And so another hat that I've got is to be part of an advisory group to tātou, for IT advisory group, based on my IT experience. So there's about 5 of us on that group. And this project has flowed into that. So it's trying to find, this is technology. This is around finding the right platform that's going to be able to store and present the data. There's a whole another element around actually going out there and recording the stuff or getting a hold of the stuff. But in relation to that, I am working with Tātou to progress that pātaka mātauranga. Which funding?
So if you see in all our posts, it is around that funding person. So if we have actions, that funding person can seek the funding within the tile space, within the Manamutaki space, within the the tangata space. So that's and we put them in there in every street to ensure that that's how we're gonna, that's the way to go really, is to sort of get that person to do the funding space. Having a plan, so before we get our funder, having this plan is to show them this is where we need you to target and having a focus on it.
In terms of our own establishment, we've developed our policies and procedures, and we have finalised those. But every couple of months, we need to go through a review process of that. So we're sticking to that. But yeah, our policies and procedures have been developed. There's also reference in there to contracting. So in terms of bringing a person on board, we've got the job descriptions, position descriptions, advertising to do.
Just the person now.
And also just looking at contracting.
And contracts. Yeah, it's pretty much the funding research is that. It's just that, you know, the funding person who's coming on board around how do we seek the funding space. We're going to have that throughout all our polls. Because our aim is not to spend any of our kāhui money if we can, and we can do that contingent start off, but it's to try and get these positions to be funded. So you'll see that throughout our whole PO work that we do, it's seeking funding to do that position.
Yeah. In terms of growing our asset base, certainly first base for us is to develop our so SIPO is statement of investment policies and objectives, which I've got another slide further on. But that's the first thing that we have to do, establish what our principles and policies are around the monies that we have, and I'll go through it when I cover the SIPO in a bit more detail. But it's developing that, and then we can look at, we're also looking at our financial forecasting. What do we need? How are we going? In terms of future-proofing our access, so Tato undertook an exercise to clean up the database. There was a few things that it was mainly information that was missing because it wasn't captured in the first instance. So they had a team of people there at the beginning of the year who went through all of the applications and captured the information that was missing.
Example, one person registered 50 people and only had their contact number for those 50 people.
Oh. True.
So that's sort of what highlighted by doing the exercise. For my tail.
Yeah. And then that, Pātaka Mātauranga pops in there again. But then there's the point that we talked about earlier in terms of engaging with our rangatahi, forming that rōpū there, and in order for those activities, whatever plans that are coming out of it, to also have a person working on that, which is that rangatahi
activated job.
Marae revitalisation, so both Whakaki and Iwitia are part of the Whakaora Marae. I believe the work at Iwitia has been carried out last week, and next week, I think they're doing the whole, this week and next week, doing a whole lot of concreting around there. And from our discussions yesterday, we're hoping to commence ours Monday week. So within the next month, that should be complete. In terms of Whakaki Marae, I've reached out to apply for funding to do a feasibility study for a new whare and ablutions. That funding was approved, so we're having a hui next weekend to kick that off with the whānau, get in terms of their needs. So this is my hat, and you know, I'm wanting an opportunity to talk to TWNART Marae and Te Rauhina around what needs to happen to, if you want to get into a space of doing marae development, like having a new having a new building put on the block, etc. So there's a couple of prerequisites to that that we can talk about. I know there's funding available to do that work, so that we can talk about that as well.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just update you guys on what we've done here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
Whakaora marae.
Yes, we did.
So we completed that.
And we actually removed, we had paid for it ourselves. We removed the bridge block, the one that's gone.
Oh, okay.
That's all brand new roof on. We paid for the materials, but KE did all the labour.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Right.
So we didn't have to pay for the labour.
Oh, yeah.
And they've done a good job, eh?
Mm.
And,
Cool.
they're going to come back and paint the fence.
Oh,
Cool.
And, probably give it a try with it.
Yeah, no, that's been a good scheme to have the cadets hey,
So
on
that's
the
all
job
we've
there.
done so far.
Cool. What about the fence? I noticed there's a new fence up there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a new fence.
it's part of Whakaora.
Right.
I probably actually came back with his, he's got a building coming up.
Mm,
They
cool.
actually got to work on it.
Yeah.
For the fence and that. It's gonna be about 4 days, 5 days, right? So thank you, Dan.
Done.
We're ready for that project.
Next one.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah. So if we're looking at big renovations, there are certain things that have to be done before we
Yeah,
get to the
Renee.
stage. Yeah.
Kitchen, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm just waiting for some time with the committee there, so we can have that cordial.
Ka pai.
So hapu mātauranga, it falls into that pātaka mātauranga space. It's just a different source of stuff that you want to store and make available. So that's across this PO as well.
Have you got someone to do your feasibility study?
For whakahī, yeah. So one of our nieces, she's a architect down in the Bay. Yeah, Alex Heperu. Yeah, so we engaged her a lot to do it. And I've worked on other marae upgrades as well.
Cool. Papakanga. It is the space that we're looking to around the housing. Te Rauhina Marae doesn't, the only land that we currently have is the only land that we have is marae. But then that doesn't, but also there's more, what I found in the space for us is that we're actually in a red zone in regards to flooding. And so if we were to head more up on the hills, that would be more bases around where can we situate, or where could we situate if something like that was to wipe us out. We need to move more on that space. So, but we're definitely looking at Papakainga as one of the key ones for our kāhui of an opportunity that we can support from this point where our whānau want to go in that space. The part around the hauora. So because we don't, and that was something that I spoke to just Tato, there's nothing around health. And we're losing a lot of whānau just on the ground. And I think any initiatives that we can bring to our AGM, like we're wanting to bring the whānau, do some blood tests and all that kind of stuff, just something simple, just to start the conversation and then start encouraging within our kāhui. What are some of the key things now with COVID? So we're clear, we're very thing that all our marae have a COVID, so that we have a COVID plan that we can also help and share with the with each marae if they don't have a COVID plan in regards to the what do you do during the space if we were to be in level 3 and more tangihana, that kind of space. Our marae set up to do that, and we want to help whatever we can in that space around our marae and a whānau space with the hauora.
One of the things that we look at, and that's one of looking at hauora, we're starting off with and it may, the research may already be done by various there's heaps of health groups.
Right, KE.
Yes, there are lots of service providers out there.
But in our area,
Yeah,
out in our area, we've even found with our few that there are needs that are not being met.
met.
And so the sick and the elderly, and so someone needs to do, whether you get whole water people, KE or whoever the hell it is responsible for, come out and keep a handle on those who are sick and mentally ill as well.
Yes.
Because we've got not only our elderly, we've also got mentally ill who need constant care. So that would be, if you were wanting a place to start, rather than trying to repeat everything.
Yeah, no,
The
we're
resources
not
are
in
already-
that space.
the resources are already there. It's just that they're not getting out here.
That's a very good suggestion. Kate.
Yes.
So that would be a good
Yeah.
all about outline.
Because at the moment, all those various service providers, they're all reactive. So it's based on
We want
something
to-
happening, it's something typically not good before they intervene. Whereas this is actually
This is about
taking a
being
proactive approach.
proactive
And
space.
going out there.
There's so many things now that are
Mm.
happening around the elderly care, just even with men's health and women's health, and pushing this to ensure that we've got sort of those sort of mechanisms.
So one of the things we discovered in Mahoney was we need to send somebody into the house. And discover that now I think people suffering from nutrition and dehydration, really basic things like that. But they don't really look after themselves, they were feeding people off, coming in far no, I'll take the point.
Yeah,
It wasn't
right.
until one of our like the butterfly, she just floated past them to go and make a cup of tea and then open the cupboard. And
See what they've got.
So then we started doing
Cool.
the proactive stuff and loading up. And so it's more of a being aware of people where they are. And this is because the services are all there and then a telephone call you can probably get, but it's being able to identify, monitor, keep an eye on the sick and
The other thing that we didn't put up there too was just, and it became apparent this year, was civil defence planning for our communities. So as I responded to the Whakaki, committee, we're here to help. We just need to know what you need. So Iwitia have a good plan in place. Te Rauhina need to develop theirs as well around civil defence. So this is what happens if the tsunami comes along and what do we do? So Whakaki does have a committee that are working on it.
which is really good. Really good having it. What's his name?
Dino
Dino.
Mayana. Yeah.
Because that's who we want to bring to.
You know,
the
he's
meeting,
heaps.
yeah.
The thing with him is that we live with him to contact with him.
Oh, okay.
And we have feedback from, and I have followed it up, and it's still got
Okay. Yeah.
What I found useful with the korero for the tsunami was that it made me go and look outside to see where the power poles are. Because it's all good to say we're going to meet at Waiapai, but if you can't get out your gates because the power pole's going to come down and right down the road,
No, you go.
so you go
How you gonna
backwards
make
and
it?
go up the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's always the first thing. Get to the nearest highest hill. Yeah, oh, hell you can. Yeah.
That's a good point. Me too.
Okay. And the last one on there was just around people potential. So the stream that's in there is with our rangatahi at the moment, which I'm sure we've talked enough about already.
Yeah. So that's our PO update in regards to where we are.
Can I just ask a question for the rangatahi? What are we, well, not only the rangatahi, because I know we've been discussing us old people. What are we doing for the pea problem in Waiapai?
So that's I will speak in this sense. So because we are involved in Wairau, they have a P strategy which has been created. At the moment, they also have rehabilitation spaces.
Okay.
So Te Tawhiti have started their first group, which they have 33 whānau at the moment that are going up the hospital. And they've been seen by the Dr. Amber. And so from there, they're going to take them out to where they're safe spaces, where they're actually working with them on the whānau. But they have 33 and they only just sort of set up within the last couple of weeks. So I think there's initiatives that are happening in the community. It's probably just about how do we just update our whānau on where that could be seen, and if there is help that we need to help, then we have to do, how do we make that happen, really? But that's the current space of what we need to pay.
So that may be part of this whole thing about talking to us about different programs.
Current programs.
Because you got
So we know what where to go.
Yep.
And access stuff. And I think that the ultimate, a lot of it's about they don't know how to access stuff.
Well, you've got for Pete, you've got a whole lot of police running around in Wairoa, but we all know what the problem is. You know, it's not about, it's okay, the gangs are there, but the gangs are there for purpose. What we have to do is stop the pain. You know, if we can do something else.
So what I've seen on the, what I've seen in the, and just in the discussions in the community is that the gangs are the ones that are providing the pay.
Yeah.
So they bring that to the community.
Yeah.
So the police's angle around what they want to do is step down on that. But then we also have to do on the flip side, we, the ones who are currently going through the space of being addicted. And so it's how do we look after them? And so there is a discussion, but what I haven't heard is the rural areas speak about this, or if it's happening out in that area.
No,
Or...
people just read it when a car comes along and pay $20. And then they're sold for 2 days and they cause mayhem.
Oh.
Oh, we.
I think we need to look at the law going back to deregulation of decriminalising marijuana together with the tea. I think once you decriminalise it, then people will go back that way. Tea.
Right.
Anyway, there's lots
So-
of
okay,
concern about
yeah.
that. Great, you know, yeah, ones that are in there.
Still doing it.
There's a woman, we met a woman one night, she seemed like queen bee for
Oh, yeah. So that's Nairi.
Yeah.
Nairi cultural.
Oh, yes.
Nairi had it. Yeah.
Rightio.
Radio.
Okay,
Sorry.
we're almost there.
Almost
So-
there,
Kia ora, Benita. Yeah. So just touching briefly on the SIPO once again. So a SIPO is a statement of investment policy and objectives. What the hell does that mean? It's just a way where you can, I guess, get your figure out your thoughts in terms of what you should be doing with your money. So it touches on what your investment principles and policies are. So a couple of examples of that could be, you know, we need to invest prudently, not spend it at the races or anything like that. Investing consistent with our values. So there may be, you know, no-go areas for us to invest in. And so those are the principles, and, you know, you develop some policy around that. SIPO will also look at what your options are for investment. So what that makeup, what that breakdown of your of where you're investing that money in it. So that's the real reason why we need a SIPO. And, you know, so far we've basically taken the Tato SIPO as our base, and massaged that into one that's specific for Whakakīnui. And sort of advice from Tony Gray and also Lee Gray, no relation, those two, to assist us with us. So we do aim to complete that. There's decisions that, based on the feedback that we've got, that we need to make on the management structure. So Heather made the comment before about, well, you fellas can set up your own commercial arm. I said, yeah, we can. that comes at a cost.
Costs.
The commercial arm that's out there, that's doing this type of mahi is Tātou Tātou. So that is, you know, the discussion that we're having is that we want Tātou Tātou to invest the money for us, not us investing in Tātou Tātou, although we may do that occasionally by buying up the KBUs, but to invest with them so that, you know, we can just hand them over money, they give us back a return after a certain period of time. So anyways, we've got to sort that out and then look at what our investment options are, which will be conservative.
It's new end date.
Yeah.
All right, I saw those eyes.
See, just based on it, Lee mentioned the earlier point saying, you know, what do you, the money that we do have within the Kāhui, what do you want it for, you know? And yeah, he did set us did leave us with the thought that, well, you know, Tātou Tātou is actually looking after the majority of your money to make sure that you're getting a return on your income. So, you know, this other money that you receive as a Kāhui, you really need to think about, you know, what you should be doing with that, whether it's reinvesting or whether it is distributing out on, you know, all these activities we want.
So the three things you can do is you can set up an investment thing based on a site code for us.
Yeah.
ourselves. Number two, you can invest in, and as part of that, you can invest in income generating activity.
Yeah.
Buying buildings, farms.
That's
whatever
right.
you wanna do.
Yeah.
And the third thing, which is really just pondering the bank doing nothing.
Yeah, which is, yeah,
Which is a waste of
the,
time.
yeah,
So, and then,
yeah.
Actually,
Momo, right.
actually, as part of that whole thing, though, what we've been doing by default is paying for stuff that keeps us going and sets us up,
Yeah.
which is a diminishing return kind
Yeah.
of thing. So this year, we need to be looking at.
Yeah,
We've got
how
some
do we earn
expenses
money?
to meet, but we need to start looking at pulling
How do
some
we
more money
generate?
in, not only to do activity, but also to
Yeah,
put in profit.
build up.
build up. Too
So,
true.
Thank you for awesome. Thank you. Before we go into general business, I just want to introduce Benita. Kia ora, Benita. Thank you for coming to our hui. You might be able to answer a lot of questions, but introduce yourself. So by all means, the floor is yours.
Ora te whānau tāke tēnei te tō rau tuku me kia koutou whakahaere nei e tiaki mai nei I tēnei kāhui koutou ngā pau hapa tātou ngā pakeke kuia karaua puta noa I koutou ngā pau hei whai ake I a mātou te arahi mai I a mātou he whai ake no reira tēnā koutou katoa me huri tēnei ngā tamatarangi Kopanei te tāhiri kupu e mai, tipu a kia ko nei te wairoi ki tāne I te kirau, turn the nav, I reira tipu ai. I kuraina a hoki a hari ki tāne nei. Nā kau nui ana hauki ko nei ki tēnei wāhi ki wā tātou ngā whānau hokupuna. Mō ngā tau rua te kaupia, rua te kaumā toru, I noho atu au ki kainei noho ana, e mahi ana, e nari hoki mai a hau tērā tau, noho wai hopinua ki awamate, tātei ka whai hoki aku tamariki, hoki tamahine me ka te tama, te tai ki tokore mau aku tamariki, e ngani ka hoki mai rāke ki te kaina, hari kua ana, whānau I ko nei, e ngani tuaki tēnei, I tēnei nangi, everywhere, tētai whakamohio atu ki taku tū ngā mahi I tātou, te tare I te tāne. Ko ai te pau whakahaere kaupapa o reira, the project lead, and ka mihi kia koutou kia hotina ki te kua kia tau mai hau, tēnā tātou kia ora mai koutou katoa. So thanks for having me, I'm Benita Tahuri, and I've come in a specific role, I guess, working for Tātou Tātou about 8 weeks as Pau Whakahaere Kaupapa, which is the project lead, which allows me to see across all the projects under Tātou Tātou and understand what's happening so that I can feedback and share and engage with our whānau. Whether that be through Kāhui,
marae, ka whika. That means is so it's important kaupapa for me to hold, and I'm privileged to be able to be in that space and to be there 8 weeks. Prior to that, and the human beings in that space, I guess, in the last year, in the starting of the setup was Lewis, and then we had Melissa, and then Charlene Wido in the office. Melissa's since moved on about 9 weeks ago, and we've just employed another admin manager, Evelyn Ross, who follows from here. But she's been gone 30 years, returned on, I think, October. And Tanil Bradley, she's in there as another admin. So we're getting some feet on the ground now in order to do some mahi. I think capacity was an issue, so there are lots of things that we needed to do in order to give our kaupapa some uruguru meki, kia rira te manu. Today I just thought I'd come and introduce myself and give you a little bit of an update of what's been happening in our space and some areas where we can connect and maybe understand the role of Tātou Kāhui, what the commercial features mean, what that means for us as Kāhui and whānau, where we can contribute and how Tātou might be able to help this Kāhui and the marae here realise some of the aspirations and dreams that we have and bringing them to fruition. So there's lots going on in this space. So yeah. I've got a few people at Copa like that now.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Sweet. So today I just wanted to do an update of the tile. We got to tile Copa because we had our first one in here.
Because that was going to be a question. So I just printed a few. So I just put together a little bit of I know some of us are here. It's really just the key kind of finance and one. There's that one kaupapa, the second one is around communications strategy, what that means, and what ways are the best strategies, and how we might communicate better with our whānau hapu, Kāhui, how that looks, what that looks like, because I'm in charge leading out communications strategy and plan. So that's one of the kaupapa. Also, did you get Lewis's? Yes, so we've gone through Tātei's report.
Yeah, cool. So I could probably add to all the questions of that. Also, which Bob has been working on the review of the TWS system and what that means for us, and particularly what other functionality do we want in terms of the registration database or CRM moving forward. And also, yeah, that's it. So there's the final update. Then an awesome first one here around the tile, and it was just an open hui. One of the key outcomes from that is that we're going to be next steps is setting up a Tātou tile unit per se committee with representation from the Kāhui and coming up with the overall tile strategy for Tātou. So that was one key thing that came out of that.
Could I just ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Just on the things you want to go through other strategies, but the playoff strategy. So
Yes.
was there going to be some aspect of it that was going to deal with the kind of here and now, or was it all about a planning and development and strategic planning and that could go on for other months or years? Because some of us are actively engaged in playoff, and I don't know why we weren't here actually. I don't know why the Lake Trust wasn't here. Because we've got a $3 million strategy running. Also, regional council. I mean, that would be good to be part so that we could be informed about that. and also to participate. Because I love the planning stuff. I'm a strategic planner, that's my background. But there's got to be something running alongside it. Because Tātou have been settled for a while now. Kāhui are being established, and we're doing development processes. But so just to let you know, seeing as you're the lead, you might have to catch up with you at some stage. But just to see what, as well as developing the strategy and planning going forward, about the stuff that's happening on the ground, because there's some advocacy, support, there's all sorts of things needed at the ground level for a number of projects that are either going or in the process. Just a signal.
No, absolutely brilliant, and yes, the answer is the overall one, or the Tātou one, because I know there's lots of work in this space, isn't about a new thing or a long-term thing, it's about both. So it's about finding Kāhui coming up with their own plans and actions for now and relationships, but also strategically Tātou needs one. So it's not about stopping, holding up or anything like that, but doing them both. But we can't come out and say, for you, what's your taiao goals and aspirations? We could say, what are they, how can we help you achieve them, and what is happening in the space? So it's more, it is about opening up the channels, I suppose, and connecting and communicating, which obviously didn't happen in the taiao wānanga, because you would have been here. Yeah, totally not about, yeah, it is about, Tātou still needs that, but, and that will be kind of general overall, and then each kāhui, takiwā specifically, will have key things that you're working on already and now, and that's about us understanding what that is really. So that is coming from this way up, and then accessing what other support or what is needed in the now, because I totally think you know you and use catch up. And so that was, I know it's very brief. I guess one of the things, there are going to be things that we can't get already in place now, and then the changes, the panel to buy, all those, the RM, all those things that need to be put in place within the next 2 years are things that Tātou will be looking at too, and also, but collectively, how do we do that, and what are the impacts of those for each of our different areas? So it's a big conversation, it's a big mahi. So what we're asking, I guess, or saying is space, and does Kāhui want to participate with a rep or somebody who's in that space now to come and sit with that group at this table as well. To support that. So, they're pushing out all these cultural impact assessments out now to Hapu and Iwi to do. There's just a whole lot of things and understanding that. And so through the tripartite that agreement, the relationship that Tātou has with Wairau District Council and then Hawke's Bay District Council, that's another layer of information and understanding those changes and who participates where. So there is a lot going on. And, I don't profess to be anything other than knowing about much in that space, but I do know that I'm good at bringing the right people to the table and the space when needed. So, and I welcome anybody to just make direct contact with me. If I can't handle, I don't know, I'll find out. Or link to somebody that does. So thank you for that. So that's one thing, and then the CRM, or the how do we collect our data? I'm not sure if you've given an update. So that's something that was a review was done on how we collect our registration information and data, and what that means for Kāhui and whānau. Currently, we're kind of winding up the review around that and what it means and all the issues. We know, and we are changing the different CRM, which is basically a database with different functionality. One of the questions for Kāhui and whānau is, what else do we need it to do? What functionality specifically is going to be useful for Kāhui and whānau? Like, what other data information do we want to,
I wouldn't mind having a chat.
Yeah.
But
The
because,
data.
because the more complex you get, the more information that you try to gather, the worse it can become. It's like police $40 million blowout. But just simple stuff would be useful. If you're looking at a framework, the current system doesn't work, and it's also huge risk with a single operator. But if there was a new system with real basic stuff, name, address, contact details, occupation, or their skill or expertise area, and then ability to access the ability to access that information, so you don't have to keep going back to ask permissions for it. And then if it was an interactive CRM, so that it could check itself. And there's one, there's a very expensive one that we use in Wiriwai, Salesforce.
oh, yes.
Because they've got a 5 billion users internationally, so it's really risk-free, if you like. But what it does is if you send out 2 emails, people don't pick them up, it automatically sends you a list. And all you have to do is to keep it current, is to check that list rather than going through the whole bloody database to see the content. But it's at a cost. So it's I guess your work will be to find it. But even if we could get the basics, so that we could all, I know that everybody would be saying, well, we want to know hapu, we want to know whānau, we want to know this, that, and the other. That's complex, and you're going to have to weigh out whether you want a complex thing to maintain, or whether you want something simple that we can all connect with, so you can keep messages out. Great thing with Salesforce when I've been away from there for 5 years. I'm still on these database, I'm still getting the updates, and it still operates without glitch. The TWNART Pro one, I had to register about 3 or 4 times to keep on it. So there's flaws in
Talking cheese.
CRMs, but there's but a simple one that links fundamental needs and gives us the numbers so we can grow the database and get the numbers that we what's the expected population that should be on
34, 34.
what's on at the moment?
Yeah, 8. 8.
So
8.5.
the simpler it is, the more connectable it is, and the better, easier to grow it is. The other thing was we did was where Pakeke don't use email and all that sort of stuff, so we're using Mokopuna as a contact point. So they became a proxy to make sure the information got out there because they don't use social media, they don't use generally email, but they might have second. Anyway, so there's just those things. So simplicity. For me, we've been waiting how many weeks? 3 years now.
Yeah, well, no, I've only been here 8 weeks. So.
Good one. You can use that one for a while, Benita.
I can tell you, we had solved one issue for Kāhui, which was they had a change in their trust deed, and a few years ago, and hapu was officially recognised and 2 other marae. But we had a whole lot of whānau who registered with that marae and hapu who weren't seen on the database until yesterday. So I met with that Kāhui and they said, this is still a problem, where's our registrations? And I said, give me a moment, we will sort this out. Went in the back end to the developer. I said, we need these added in the back end. They're not even a click box. They can't click the marae. And so gone back to them to say, we've got you at least showing up now on the database, so we can enter you and tick the right.
So maintain that one, build something new.
Yes.
And that you can train people.
Yes.
We train in people.
Yeah.
So that when one was away sick, we didn't have to wait for them to get better.
Yeah.
We've got currently just
Simplicity.
the two new admins in office. They've had training with the developer, and so the next step is to, in the next week or 2, as soon as availability, is we're going to get the same for the ones who have access now too, because we still need to work with this until the new one is.
Going until the new one.
Yeah, so we still need to get
Make
you
it
know,
simple.
don't wait, we can't wait till the new one, but I've heard people say, let's wait, I say, no, we can't wait, we get updated information, look, comes back to communication,
Yeah.
and how can I do communication? If the emails are wrong, they're not getting it, quite simple. So I'm just trying to, yeah, so all that's linked to that comms as well.
Yeah.
And then how we do that, so yes.
It might be a bit more expensive to get an interactive one, but make sure that if people change their emails, something simple as that, and across 30,000, you can have, 100 of them a week. You need a system that will pick that up, and you've got your little operators and people you bring in to actually do the changes. So,
It's not, it's, yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, we all want that. Yes, we all want that, and I hear you, and I'm gonna put in that, yes. Akaki nui aroa says, yes, we need that, let's keep this one and update this one. So, what was I gonna say on that?
And sorry, just to be transparent about that. So
Yeah.
I am a trustee for our Kāhui here, but my background is in IT. So I am doing some work for Tātou with in regard to this register, the card member register.
If you, hot off the, I suppose, whenua for housing is Tātou Commercial Board has purchased the old orchard across from Intermediate School. It's not that called that now, but next to the Kurakopa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that block in there, or housing development. So there could be an opportunity for Kāhui in there too. But that's just what it is. I know it's tagged as housing, it's going to be housing. There might be opportunities to partner with Tātou in terms of housing for Kāhui. So these are the things.
Yeah, we did share Lewis's report with those that are here today. That was raised. The question that came from out of that particular point, Benita, was what type of housing was going to be put there, bearing in mind that it's, in between two schools. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what was the question? What type of housing?
Yeah.
Well, housing for farmers.
Yeah.
Like 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms?
No.
Or upwards or.
It was an activity, it was an
Yeah,
activity
so-
question, actually, yeah.
Oh,
It was
Yeah.
also around the horse.
If it's going to be housing, then you can, that's okay.
That's
Yes.
okay.
If it was for any other activity.
Then there's going to be an issue being that it's in between two schools.
Oh, it's definitely housing, it's for housing. So, across the community, Tātou's involved with the community commissioning board around housing. The Tātou also has other housing aspirations that it's trying to do, because we need 150 houses now and 505 years. And then there will be other Kāhui looking at housing as well. So there's different kind of pockets of people working on that same
Can
kind
I ask a question just on the housing?
Yeah.
So will the priority focus for Tātou be at the low end of the housing? Or
It's,
commercial?
it's
Not going to be a commercial thing to
No.
classification itself, because everyone's
No.
going after that group A.
yeah.
But the real big gap is at the bottom end.
Yeah,
We can't, and it may be a combo deal with Tātou and housing in New Zealand.
So they are looking at investigating all those social housing, and it's whether we like thinking about, do we want to get them to do it, them be the landlords, like as a government? Do we want to be our own landlords, purchase the houses? The Kāhui will own some of the houses, and we hold the land and have a partnership like that, or even things like it's $300,000 house. A partnership between a whānau, like you come up with 150, we'll do the 150, could be that partnership to get people into housing. So there's lots of different models.
I think the bottom end, the one you described, is the
Yeah.
Crown funding, everything, we provide the land, Crown funds the houses, that means that there's no obstacle to our people, the lower end. Like getting into it.
Yeah.
And we might help them,
Yeah.
I think that would be, if we could take care of the lower
Yeah.
grouping first, because that's the
really
the
needed.
waiting tax for Housing New Zealand with the government is to provide state housing.
Mm.
They're not doing it at the speed that they should, so something that's going to mean that we've got an investment in the land, it's something we want to change it for the future. So in the meantime, we provide that because it's.
And it's a kind of houses will go up, you know, you can go up, you can see it, and it's movement shift to in terms of,
does. Did they just create one
Just
coming up
create-
the New Zealand Housing Conference that was held in February? So they have just written that policy. But they had one up for the first Papakainga Waira, which was the Tanahu sisters out at Mahia.
Mm.
So they had something similar to the Papakainga policy. They just had to change
If
that.
you can match that with Tātou's investment, so Tātou from investment point of view is to buy land out of Whakaki, Mahia, Nuhaka, and provide the land and then get the government to put the houses
housing.
on it. Yeah, it just means that we don't need to move away.
That's correct.
And a lot of PL people want to be out, stay out where we are. A lot of being out where we are. They just need affordable, comfortable houses.
That's
And that's the way
correct.
of providing it. So that might be.
I know Kāhui are asking for support to get feasibility on land, rural land as well, for housing. So those kinds of requests for support are coming into other Kāhui as well. It might be another way of looking at it.
We could negotiate a deal with our big land block owners
Yes.
to put aside a
A
part
part
of
of
that.
that.
It only needs to be a
housing.
small footprint
Yeah.
and make it so you can build a dwelling on it, so it's just really looking at smart way, but we need to house our people. Some of them are just.
Yep.
Is I'm seeing there's a list of 85 that would make.
That's just on the waiting list. That's not the ones that's currently sleeping in the sheds or on the couches.
So there you go.
Yes, so everybody's looking at it, it's about being prepared and ready as a Kāhui artist to make the decisions when Tātou says, this is what our plan is, we want 10 houses on this block, and what would how would that roll out and are we ready as a Kāhui? I'm not saying it doesn't, but are we ready to, as a farmer here, to make, yes, let's go for it, what do we want? Or what would be the ideal housing partnership or other that we could make as a Kāhui with Tātou or without.
See, we should be doing a bit of research on what our housing needs are in each of our communities, and then coming to you. Saying we've got 6 people, 10 people, 3 families. Yeah, and we have talked with you, and you say right, can Tātou facilitate investment from.
This is what it looks like.
Government, so do that sort of thing, so.
I know that. So this is one of my 12 or 13 projects I'm involved with. But it's good that I've got to connect this specifically, but what I'm here to say is that I'm here, I'm in the office, phone call away. Please come in, and it's just because the more people hang around, the more information you learn, and it's just because I'm there every day that I'm picking up all the kind of subtleties that I can share the information. So a key part of my role is around engaging with the whānau. If they've got questions, I need to have something that I can share, and if I don't know, then I find out. So
Kāhui. Thank you. Please don't go anywhere. Stay for our cup of tea.
Primary school.
North Pole, it's one of the
Treaty
properties, street plan properties, yeah.
So it is currently under treaty claim. It is a DSP property. Yep.
Yeah.
Scott Street has some houses, some property as well that are under DSP.
Two-door school.
Tulidor School is another place that's under DSP with the DSP, and those are through the other Kāhui.
So those schools still pretty good.
No, we went through Tulidor, and it looked like it was considering it's been abandoned.
Get on with doing something about it, don't be like us, we're spending 200,000.
Well, maybe you need to go to that Kāhui area and say, hey, this is what we've done with our school.
We haven't tried.
Well, they're still in the process of, do we want to purchase it back, or what are we going to do? That kind of conversation between and there's three or four Kāhui.
DSP's got to be settled first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think that's what we got to realise with the, other than what Tātou's done now by buying the land, and all these other lands, they still have to go through a process of DSP. So if they've actually gone out and said, look, we're going to buy this bit of land because we need to start now, because that was their issue, was no land. So now we're in that space of being able to enter space. Okay, whānau, we're on to the general business. And we've had a big ass discussion around it. We've gone along through our general business through, well, I think we've done our general business, but is there anything else on our table that we
One
need to
last chance.
going? Whakakapi? Kia ora whānau, thank you so much for coming today. And also to our whānau that are on, if they're still there, on our Zoom session. We've recorded that. So our Joanna can go through it and the story and stuff as well. It has been, our next Kāhui is in October. So that's only a couple of months, not 6 months away. So we will bring more to the table. Bob and I and Joanna are contactable if you need us. But we will be hitting the ground running with all your, or everything you gave us today.
We take.
Everything.
Well, good question, Richie. I think we have, but I don't know where a date for October.
No, we should have a date for October. We've set our calendar out to ensure that our hui has a date. Oh, yeah, no. And the host for our next hui is Iwitia?
No, it's
Oh,
Whakaki.
sorry, Whakaki.
So everybody's gone there. Yeah. Right, okay. Yeah. I'll give you a date. Sorry, I'll give you a date. I have got. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, so good question. Liz resigned at the last AGM, and we went to
Yeah, Raymond Mayhana,
Raymond Mayhana is based in Wellington.
who's based in Wellington.
Yeah, and he's the new chair. We've extended the arm out, Joanna here, so we can actually speak to him. We all haven't spoken to him yet. We normally do everything for Nigel anyway, but this year. Oh, so they do apologise. They were fine. But they did update us. So yes, date. Well, that's a good thing too. So we send out in our whānui, and we're unsure if we're receiving any because we haven't been getting online. We haven't been getting much response. We will advertise this one because it's our.
Wi-Fi. I'm the wifey. I'm the wifey.
What's the date?
Oh, TWNART Hui. Yeah, there it is. Sorry.
What is it?
Showing blind date. 16th, Saturday, 16th of October.
It's on the 15th.
Saturday, 16th of October.
So we're gonna.
That's a Saturday. You know, living in the night.
Can I just ask Papa Bill, can you fuck a copy us and so we can have see it I have done a cup of tea.
Ngā miri ki o tōtou I roto tātou kōrero. Whai tonu a ngā motu mai nei. Whakarongo ki ngā kōrero. Tātou tūpuna Te Rauhina. He kona no wairua I roto tātou. Nō reira whai tīmatanga tātou. O te huki o tama o tātou. I roto te matu te tama me te wairua tātou. Te whāngai ko mā. Te whā ko muti tātou hu. Aroa nui ki a koe. Ko mai ki a mātou. Tātou kōrero. Nā puti o te ora me ki o tātou. Ngā i tēnei ki ino I ki a koe. Whakapaingi ta haere o tātou I rungu I tuarai. Whakapaingi tātou waka. Whakapaingi tātou pai mai roto tātou waka. Ka tae ana mātou. Ki o tātou whānau ki o tātou kā. Ngā mea māwiwitanga. I roto tēnei hui. I roto ko hoi pe. I roto tātou whānau. I roto ngā marae maha. Me piki ki ora ki tātou kato. I roto te aro ki a koe, I roto matu e te tama, e te wairua tapu āne.
Amen. Kia ora rā.
Tata wai, titiro.
Rira.
Ki te maunga whakarongo ki ngā tai. Mauia mai ki te maunga rongo nui. Hei o ki tama mo te iwi. He rā tuki ake nei. Ki taku manawa, ko te mana motu hake o te iwi o ka hununu. E wā tuki a tēnei, ki taku manawa, ko te mana motu hake o te iwi o ka hununu.
Mate atu e mana ki tātou. Roto da mai, kui te tama me te wairua tapu āne.
Amen. Kia ora.
Those that don't know about that quiet, I was about 7 years old when I went up to Johnny's teeth and looked up off a little bit. And he was like, he sounded to me, and he said, now you remember, I know you're going back to mine, but you remember that you come from here, you learn to talk.
The whole time.
I know. That was good. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
I was just at the Kāhui. Yeah, are you you would know my nephew Henare Tāwina.